In the deafening roar of a 1870s Leeds textile mill, you're a weaver, fighting not just the back-breaking work of power looms, but a new enemy: automated machines, stealing jobs and futures. As your wages dwindle and your family teeters on the edge of the workhouse, will you risk everything to join a desperate strike against the machine's grip? Or will the relentless march of progress crush your hopes for a better life? Story 1. The endless shifts in Lancashire cotton mills. Imagine yourself stepping into the dim, humid haze of a Lancashire cotton mill in the early 19th century, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of raw cotton and machine oil. The Industrial Revolution has transformed the quiet English countryside into a landscape dotted with towering brick factories, their chimneys belching smoke that blots out the sun. You, as a typical factory worker, perhaps a man in his 30s, with calloused hands and a perpetual stoop from years of labor, begin your day before dawn. The factory bell tolls at 5 a.m., a relentless call that pulls you from a thin straw mattress in a cramped cottage shared with your family. Breakfast is hasty, a slice of coarse bread and weak tea, if you're fortunate enough to afford it. Wages are meager, often just enough to cover rent and basic sustenance, leaving little for luxuries like meat or fresh vegetables. As you trudge along cobbled streets lined with identical worker housing, the mills loom ahead like monolithic beasts, built along rivers for water power initially, and later powered by steam engines invented by the likes of James Watt. These factories represent progress to the mill owners, but drudgery to you. Entering through iron gates, you're enveloped by the deafening roar of machinery, spinning mules, power looms, and carding machines clattering in unison. The floor vibrates under your feet, and fine cotton lint floats everywhere, settling in your lungs and eyes. Health concerns are dismissed. The owners, such as Robert Owen in his more progressive moments, or the profit-driven Arkwrights, prioritize output over welfare. You tie a rag around your mouth, a futile barrier against the dust that will eventually lead to byssinosis, or brown lung, a condition that shortens lives but is rarely acknowledged. Your role might be that of a piecer, scurrying under the spinning frames to tie broken threads, or a minder overseeing dozens of mules that stretch threads into yarn. The work is monotonous, requiring constant vigilance to avoid snags that could halt production and dock your pay. Shifts stretch from 12 to 16 hours, 6 days a week, with only brief pauses for meals eaten amid the din. Children as young as 6 labor beside you, their small fingers nimble for detailed tasks, but their growth stunted by malnutrition and exhaustion. The Factory Act of 1833 aimed to limit child hours to 9 per day for those under 13, but enforcement is lax in remote mills, and owners find loopholes by employing apprentices from poorhouses. The social fabric of your life revolves around this mill. Families migrate from rural farms, drawn by promises of steady work after enclosures displaced them from common lands. Yet, the reality is a loss of autonomy. Community forms in shared hardships, whispered conversations during rare lulls about better conditions elsewhere, or tales of Luddite uprisings from a decade prior where workers smashed machines in futile protest. Religion offers solace. Methodist chapels spring up, preaching endurance in this life for rewards in the next. But Sundays, your only rest, are spent mending clothes or tending tiny garden plots for potatoes. Economically, the mills fuel Britain's empire, exporting cotton goods worldwide, processed from slave-harvested raw materials in the Americas. You rarely ponder the global chain, focused instead on surviving the day. Injuries are common. Fingers crushed in gears, scalps torn by belts. Medical care is rudimentary, often just a quick bandage before returning to work. The air grows hotter as the day wears on, steam from boilers mixing with human sweat, fostering fevers and rheumatism. As the evening bell finally rings, you stumble home, body aching, mind numb from the repetition. But what happens when this routine breaks? When illness strikes or a strike looms? The seeds of discontent are sown in these endless shifts, whispering of change yet to come. You return to the Lancashire cotton mill the next morning, your body still aching from yesterday's toil. The factory bells clang, cutting through the pre-dawn chill. The Industrial Revolution's promise of prosperity feels distant as you navigate the familiar cobbled path, passing other workers whose faces mirror your exhaustion. Inside, the mill is a relentless beast, its machinery already worry as you take your place among the spinning mules. The air, thick with cotton dust, clings to your clothes and skin, a constant reminder of the toll this work exacts. You've heard whispers of workers coughing up blood after years in these conditions. Yet the mill owners, wealthy men like the Peels or Arkwrights, rarely visit the shop floor to witness the human cost of their fortunes. Your role as a piecer demands precision and speed, darting beneath the machines to knot broken threads before the overseer notices. The overseer, a stern figure with a ledger and a stick, enforces discipline with fines or blows for tardiness or errors. Wages are paid weekly, often in tokens redeemable only at the company shop, where prices for bread and tea are inflated, trapping you in a cycle of debt. A skilled minder might earn 15 shillings a week, but as a piecer, you're lucky to see half that, barely enough to feed your family of 5. The 1833 Factory Act promised reforms, like limiting work hours for children and mandating 2 hours of schooling. But in rural mills like yours, inspectors are rare, and owners skirt regulations by falsifying age records or bribing officials. Life outside the mill offers little reprieve. You live in a damp, two-room cottage provided by the mill owner, shared with your wife, a weaver, and 3 children, 2 of whom work alongside you. The rent, deducted directly from your wages, leaves little for coal or candles. Meals are repetitive porridge or potato stew, occasionally flavored with a scrap of bacon. Your wife speaks of her childhood on a farm, where fresh air and seasonal rhythms offered a different hardship, one less suffocating than the mill's endless grind. The community, though, holds you together. Neighbors share what little they have, and on Saturday evenings, you might gather at a local pub, where a fiddler plays tunes that briefly drown out the memory of the machines. Socially, the mill shapes every interaction. You've joined a friendly society, a mutual aid group where workers pool pennies to cover funerals or sickness, a necessity since accidents are frequent. Last month, a young girl lost her hand to a spinning frame. She was sent home with a pittance, her family now reliant on charity. Such incidents fuel quiet resentment. You hear tales of trade unions forming in larger towns like Manchester, where workers demand shorter hours and safer conditions. The Combination Acts of 1799 and 1800 made such organizing illegal, branding it as sedition. But secret meetings happen in back rooms, where men like you weigh the risks of speaking out against the certainty of starvation. The mill's output drives Britain's economy, its cotton feeding global markets, yet you see none of that wealth. The steam-powered looms produce thousands of yards of cloth daily, shipped to colonies or sold to Europe, while your life remains tethered to the same repetitive tasks. Education, a distant dream for your children, is limited to Sunday schools run by churches, teaching basic reading and moral lessons about obedience. Some workers cling to these teachings, finding hope in faith. Others, like your friend Tom, mutter about rebellion. Inspired by the Chartist movement's calls for workers' rights. As you pause for a midday break, eating cold porridge amid the clatter, you notice a new tension among the workers. A rumor spreads. The mill owner plans to extend shifts to meet a large order. How will you and your fellow workers respond when pushed beyond endurance? And what risks might defiance bring? You stand once more in the Lancashire cotton mill, the familiar din of spinning mules and power looms enveloping you as the rumor of extended shifts becomes reality. It's 1835, and the mill owner, driven by a surge in demand for cotton from London merchants, has decreed 16-hour days for the next month. Your body, already worn from years of labor, protests with every movement. Yet, refusal means dismissal and starvation for your family. The Industrial Revolution has made Britain the workshop of the world. But for you, it's a world of unrelenting toil. The air, thick with cotton lint, irritates your lungs, and the cough you've developed deepens, a grim echo of the brown lung that claims so many. You glance at your children, their small frames hunched over machines, and wonder if this is the future you'd hoped for them. The tension among workers has reached a breaking point. Whispers of resistance, once confined to pub corners, now spill onto the factory floor. Your friend Tom, emboldened by tales of Chartist rallies, organizes a secret meeting in a nearby barn. Under flickering candlelight, you and 24 others debate your options. A strike could halt production, forcing the owner to negotiate. But the memory of the 1826 Preston strike looms. Large workers starved, and leaders were imprisoned under the Combination Acts. Still, the alternative is acquiescence, surrendering what little dignity remains. You vote to strike, a decision born of desperation. The next morning, as the factory bell rings, you and your comrades refuse to enter. Standing defiantly outside the iron gates, arms crossed, faces set, the response is swift. The overseer threatens evictions, and by noon, hired knobsticks from neighboring towns arrive to replace you. Violence erupts. A scuffle leaves one worker bloodied, and the local magistrate calls in the militia. By week's end, the strike collapses. You return to work, wages docked under the watchful eye of new overseers. Tom, branded an agitator, is sacked and blacklisted, vanishing to seek work in Manchester. The defeat stings, but it plants seeds of change. Within a decade, the 10 Hours Act of 1847 will limit shifts for women and children. A small victory traceable to countless failed protests like yours. Life resumes its grinding rhythm. Your family survives on thinner porridge, and your wife's health falters from the damp cottage and long hours. Yet the mill's output continues to fuel Britain's empire, its cotton goods clothing the world while you struggle to afford a second-hand coat. The community endures, bound by shared hardship. You teach your eldest son to read using a tattered Bible, hoping he might one day escape this life. Sunday chapel services offer fleeting comfort, their hymns a reminder of resilience. Amid suffering, reflecting on this era, the Lancashire mills reveal the human cost of progress. The wealth generated transformed Britain into an industrial titan, but it rested on the bent backs of workers like you. The strikes, though crushed, sparked a slow awakening. Unions grew, and reforms followed, reshaping labor laws that echo in modern workplace protections. Your story, one of countless ordinary lives, underscores a truth. History's grand narratives are built on the quiet endurance of those who toiled in obscurity. The mills are gone now, replaced by museums or shopping centers, but their legacy lingers in the rights workers claim today. What small acts of defiance, you wonder, might shape the future for your descendants? Story to child laborers in the shadow of steam engines. Picture yourself as a 9-year-old child in 1820s Birmingham, England, where the Industrial Revolution's heartbeat pulses through sprawling factories and smoky workshops. You're one of thousands of child laborers, small and nimble, darting through the chaos of a steam-powered ironworks. Your day begins at 4 a.m., roused by your mother in a cramped, soot-stained tenement where your family of 6 shares a single room. Breakfast is a crust of stale bread, washed down with water from a communal pump that tastes faintly of rust. Your parents, both factory hands, rely on your meager earnings, perhaps 2 shillings a week, to keep hunger at bay. The streets, lined with identical brick hovels, lead you to the ironworks, its towering chimneys belching coal smoke that stings your eyes. Inside, the factory is a cacophony of clanging hammers and hissing steam engines, the inventions of James Watt and Matthew Boulton, driving production at a relentless pace. You're a trapper, tasked with opening and closing ventilation doors in the coal mines that feed the factory's furnaces. Or perhaps a piecer in a nearby textile mill, scrambling under spinning machines to tie broken threads. The work is grueling for your small frame, your hands raw from handling rough tools or scalding metal. The air is thick with coal dust, and the heat from the furnaces makes your ragged clothes stick to your skin. Factory owners, like the wealthy Bolton family, see children like you as cheap labor, essential for tasks requiring tiny hands and quick movements. The Factory Act of 1802 exists in name, but its rules limiting work to 12 hours for apprentices are ignored in places like this, where profit trumps regulation. Your life is defined by the factory's rhythm. Shifts last 14 hours, with a half-hour break for a meal of cold porridge eaten on the floor. Other children work beside you, some as young as 6, their faces pale from malnutrition and lack of sunlight. Accidents are common. A boy you knew lost fingers to a steam press last week, sent home with no compensation. The overseer, a gruff man with a leather strap, barks orders and metes out punishment for dozing or slowing down. Yet, you've learned to navigate this world, dodging machinery and memorizing the overseer's patterns to steal moments of rest. Your mother taught you to wrap your hands in scraps of cloth to avoid burns, a small act of survival in a place that chews up the careless dot. Socially, your world is narrow but tight. You share stories with other children during breaks, tales of rural homes left behind when families moved to industrial towns after land enclosures. Some cling to memories of fields and streams, but you were born in Birmingham's slums, knowing only brick and iron. Sundays offer a brief escape to a charity school run by a local chapel, where you learn basic letters and numbers, though exhaustion often clouds your mind. The preacher speaks of heaven, but you dream of a day without the factories' roar. Your parents whisper about strikes in distant cities, but fear keeps them silent. Losing work means losing everything. Economically, your labor fuels Britain's rise as an industrial power, its steam engines and iron goods shaping global trade. Yet, you see none of this wealth, only the endless cycle of work and sleep. As you crawl under a machine to clear a jam, the steam engine's rumble shakes the floor, and you wonder, how long can a child endure this life before breaking? And what might happen if enough of you refuse to bend? You're back in the Birmingham ironworks, the steam engine's rhythmic thud, a constant companion as you navigate another day as a child laborer. It's still the 1820s, and at 9, you're already hardened by the factory's demands. Your role as a trapper or piecer requires constant motion, opening heavy trapdoors in the mines, or darting beneath spinning frames to mend threads. The work leaves your muscles aching, your fingers blistered from handling hot tools or coarse cotton. The factory's air is a choking mix of coal dust and steam, and your cough, shared by many children, hints at a future of illness. The overseer's watchful eye ensures no slacking. A moment's pause might earn you a sharp word or a lash from his strap. Wages, paid in copper coins, are handed to your mother, who stretches them to cover rent and meager meals, potatoes and oatcakes. Rarely. Meet. Life outside the factory is grim. Your family's tenement, a damp room with a leaking roof, houses you, your parents, and 3 siblings. The walls are thin, and the cries of neighboring families pierce the night. Your mother, a weaver, works similar hours, her hands gnarled from looms, while your father tends furnaces, his face etched with soot. Community forms in shared struggle. Neighbors lend salt or share a kettle when coal runs low. On rare evenings, you listen to an old man in the courtyard spin tales of rural life before factories. His stories, a faint spark of hope. Yet, the reality is unrelenting. Your younger sister, only 7, joined the factory last month. Her small hands now earning a shilling a week socially. The factory shapes your world. You've made friends with other children, like Sarah, a quick-witted girl who teaches you to hum tunes to pass the hours. You trade tricks for survival, how to dodge a machine's gears or sneak a sip of water without the overseer noticing. The 1819 Factory Act, meant to ban children under 9 from cotton mills, is a distant rumor. Ironworks and mines face even less scrutiny. Reformers like Richard Ostler are beginning to speak out, but their voices haven't reached Birmingham's slums. Instead, you hear whispers of resistance. Older workers talk of combinations, secret unions, plotting better wages, though such talk is dangerous under laws banning worker organization. Economically, Your labor is a cog in Britain's industrial machine. Birmingham's ironworks produce tools, rails, and machinery exported worldwide. Powered by steam and fueled by coal, you help extract the city's growth. From a market town to an industrial hub rests on children like you, whose low wages keep costs down. Yet, your family teeters on the edge of destitution. A single illness or injury could tip you into the workhouse, where families are split apart. Education remains a luxury. The charity school's lessons are sporadic, and you struggle to stay awake, your mind dulled by exhaustion. Still, you cling. 2 small acts of defiance carving your initials into a wooden beam. A quiet claim to existence in a place that sees you as a tool as you pause for your midday break. Eating a scrap of bread amid the clanging machinery, you overhear older workers muttering about a planned protest. They speak of stopping the machines, demanding shorter hours for children. The idea stirs something in you, but fear lingers. Strikes have failed before, and the consequences are brutal. What would it mean for you and your family if you joined them, and could such a risk bring change to this endless grind? You're still 9, standing in the Birmingham ironworks as the year stretches into 1829. The steam engine's roar is your constant companion. Their heat and noise, a backdrop to your life as a child laborer. The rumor of a protest has grown into action. Older workers, inspired by distant reform movements, have organized a work stoppage to demand an 8-hour day for children. You're too young to fully grasp the politics, but you feel the tension. As the factory bell rings and dozens of workers, including your father, refuse to enter, you join them, heart pounding, outside the ironworks gates, clutching Sarah's hand. The overseer shouts threats, but the crowd holds firm, chanting for fair hours. For a moment, you imagine a life with time to play or learn, free from the machine's grip. The protest collapses quickly. The factory owner, a wealthy industrialist, hires replacements, desperate men from nearby slums, and calls in constables. By day's end, ringleaders, including your father, are arrested, charged with violating the Combination Acts. Your family's income shrinks, and your mother takes on extra shifts, her health fading. You and your sister work longer hours to compensate, your small hands trembling as you navigate the dangerous machinery. The defeat is crushing, but it sparks whispers of reform. By 1833, the Factory Act will limit children's hours in textile mills, though ironworks, like yours, lag behind, leaving you to endure 14-hour shifts. Life in the tenement grows harder. Without your father's wages, meals dwindle to thin gruel, and the landlord threatens eviction. Yet, the community rallies, neighbors share what little they have, and Sarah's mother teaches you to mend clothes, saving pennies. You cling to the charity school, where a kind teacher helps you spell your name, a small victory amid the grind. The factory remains unforgiving. Last week, a boy was scalded by steam, his screams haunting your dreams. The overseer's strap stings less than the fear of becoming like him, broken by the machines. Economically, your labor fuels Birmingham's rise as an industrial powerhouse, its steam-driven goods shaping global markets. But the wealth bypasses you, flowing to factory owners and merchants. Socially, the failed protest strengthens bonds among workers. you hear talk of new reform groups, like the Short Time Committees, advocating for children. These efforts, though distant, plant hope. Years later, the 1847 10 Hours Act will cap women's and children's hours, a legacy of countless small rebellions like yours. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the hidden cost of industrial progress. Birmingham's factories built modern Britain, but they were powered by children's toil, their childhoods sacrificed for profit. Your resilience learning to read, sharing songs with Sarah, enduring despite loss mirrors countless others whose quiet strength forced change. Today, child labor laws and workplace protections trace back to those early, failed protests. The ironworks are long gone, replaced by offices or parks, but their legacy lives in the rights you helped win. As you carve another mark into that beam, you wonder, what small acts of courage might shape a better future for children yet to come? Story 3. Women weavers and the fight for fair wages. Step into the bustling textile town of Blackburn, Lancashire, in the 1830s, where you are a woman weaver, one of countless women fueling the Industrial Revolution's cotton empire. You rise at dawn in a cramped, terraced house, the air heavy with the damp of nearby canals. The factory bell summons you to the mill, where the rhythmic clatter of power looms awaits. At 25, your hands are already calloused from years at the loom, weaving cotton into cloth that will clothe the world. Breakfast is a hurried, farrowed meal, porridge, and a sip of tea shared with your younger sister, who also works the looms. Your wages, about 9 shillings a week, are a lifeline for your family, especially since your father's injury in a mill accident left him unable to work. Women like you are the backbone of Blackburn's mills, outnumbering men in weaving sheds. Due to your reputed dexterity and lower pay, the mill is a cavernous space, its air thick with cotton lint that coats your throat and eyes. Rows of steam-powered looms, an evolution of Hargreaves' spinning jenny, churn out fabric at a relentless pace. You operate 2 looms, each requiring constant attention to prevent thread breaks or jams, which could cost you a day's pay. The noise is deafening, forcing you to communicate with gestures or light reading. Overseers patrol, quick to fine you for tardiness or errors, their authority reinforced by the mill owner's distant presencemen like the Hornbys, whose wealth grows with every bolt of cloth. The Factory Act of 1833 limits women's hours to 12 per day, but loopholes and lax enforcement mean you often work longer, with only a brief pause for a cold lunch eaten at your station. Your life revolves around the mill's demands. The work is monotonous yet exhausting, your body aching from standing on the vibrating floor. The lint in the air sparks coughs, a precursor to respiratory ailments that claim many weavers by their 30s. Yet you've learned to navigate this world, sharing tips with other women on how to adjust looms for efficiency or wrap scarves to filter dust. Your community is tight-knit, forged in shared hardship. After work, you gather with other weavers in the courtyard, mending clothes or swapping stories of rural lives left behind when enclosures forced families into towns. Sundays offer a sliver of relief at the Methodist chapel, where hymns and sermons on endurance provide solace. Socially, the mill defines your identity. You're part of a growing class of female workers, valued for your skill, but paid less than men for similar tasks. Whispers of discontent ripple through the weaving shed of wages cut despite rising production. The combination acts make organizing risky, but you've heard of women in Manchester forming secret unions, inspired by reformers like Robert Owen. Economically, your labor powers Britain's global trade, with Blackburn's cotton feeding markets. From India to America, yet your family struggles to afford coal for winter. The contrast is stark. The mill owner's grand houses gleam, while your home lacks basic comforts. As you weave, you notice a new tension among the women. Rumors spread of another wage cut, despite the mill's profits. You wonder, how long can you endure these shrinking wages? And what might happen if you and your fellow weavers decide to act? You're back in the Blackburn mill. The loom's relentless clatter filling your ears as you weave cotton into cloth. It's the mid-1830s, and at 25, you're a seasoned weaver. Your fingers deft despite the ache in your joints from years of repetitive motion. The rumor of a wage cut has materialized. The mill owner, citing market pressures, has slashed pay to 7 shillings a week, a blow to your family's fragile budget. Your sister, barely 16, weeps at the news, knowing it means less food on the table. The air in the weaving shed is thick with resentment, as well as cotton dust, which settles in your lungs, making each breath a labor. The overseer, a sharpened man with a ledger, looms over you, ensuring no pause in production. Fines for broken threads or tardiness are steeper now, eating into your already diminished earnings. Outside the mill, life is a struggle to stretch. Your wages, your terraced house, shared with your parents and siblings, is damp and cold, its single fireplace barely warming the room. Meals are sparse potato stew or bread with dripping, a far cry from the farm-fresh meals your mother recalls from her youth. The community of weavers, mostly women, sustains you. You share sewing needles and scraps of cloth, pooling resources to survive. On rare evenings, you join other women at a neighbor's hearth, where talk turns to resistance. Older weavers recount the 1826 power loom riots, when workers smashed machines to protest wage cuts. Such actions are risky. The Combination Act's brand unions as illegal, but the idea of collective action stirs your imagination. Socially, the mill shapes your world, but it's a world of inequality. Men in the spinning rooms earn nearly twice your wage, though their work is no more skilled. You've learned to read a little, thanks to a Sunday school teacher, but education is a luxury when survival demands every hour. The chapel remains a refuge, its sermons urging patience, yet you hear whispers of radical preachers advocating workers' rights. In nearby towns, women like you are joining female political unions, demanding fair pay and voting rights. Inspired by the growing Chartist movement, these ideas feel distant, but they spark hope that change is possible. Economically, your labor fuels Blackburn's mills, which produce cotton goods for global markets, from colonial India to the Americas. Yet the wealth bypasses you, flowing to mill owners whose opulent homes contrast with your crumbling tenement. Accidents are frequent. A friend lost an eye to a shuttle last month, dismissed with a pittance. The lack of safety measures, like guards on looms, reflects the owner's indifference. You wrap your hands in rags to avoid cuts, a small act of defiance against a system that sees you as expendable. During a brief lunch break, eating cold porridge beside your loom, you overhear plans for a meeting. A group of weavers, led by a fiery woman named Mary, intends to confront the owner, demanding the old wage. The risk is immense. Strikes can lead to arrests or blacklisting, but so is the desperation. As you thread your loom, you ponder, could joining this fight restore your wages, or will it cost you everything you fought to keep? You stand among the looms in the Blackburn Mill, the year now 1836, your hands trembling not from the loom's vibration, but from the weight of a decision. The planned meeting has sparked action. Mary, the bold weaver, has rallied dozens of women to strike, refusing to work until wages are restored to 9 shillings. You join them, heart racing, as the factory bell rings and the weaving shed falls. Silent, outside, you and your fellow weavers form a picket line, your voices rising in a chant for fair pay. The overseers' threats, eviction fines, dismissal echo, but the shared resolve strengthens you. For a moment, you envision a future where your labor is valued, where your family can eat without fear of the next cut. The strike lasts 3 days before crumbling. The mill owner, backed by local magistrates, hires desperate women from nearby villages as strikebreakers. Constables disperse your picket with batons, and Mary is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts. You return to work, wages unchanged, your spirit bruised but not broken. The defeat is bitter, but it fuels a growing movement. By 1842, the plug riots will see workers across Lancashire pull boiler plugs to halt mills, and the 1847 10 Hours Act will cap women's workdays, a distant echo of your stand. Your sister, inspired by Mary, begins attending secret union meetings, whispering of a day when women might vote. Life in the mill grinds on. Your cough worsens, a reminder of the lint-filled air, and your mother's health fails, her years at the loom taking their toll. Your family scrapes by, relying on neighbors who share coal or broth. The community's resilience shines. Women teach each other to read, passing tattered pamphlets on workers' rights. You carve a small flower into your loom's frame, a quiet act of defiance against the monotony. Sundays at the chapel offer comfort, but the preacher's calls for patience now compete with your growing belief in action over endurance. Economically, Blackburn's mills remain the engine of Britain's cotton trade, their goods clothing empires, while you struggle to mend your children's rags. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, a stark reminder of the system's inequities. Socially, the strike has tightened bonds among weavers. You and your friends form a small savings group, pooling pennies for emergencies, a practice that will inspire later cooperative movements. The failed strike also draws reformers. Attention figures like Elizabeth Gaskell will soon write of your plight, amplifying your voice. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the quiet courage of women weavers whose labor built an industrial giant while their protests laid the groundwork for change. The mills, now museums or ruins, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though unsuccessful, helped spark labor reforms that resonate in today's workplace rights, from fair wages to gender equality. As you weave another yard of cloth, you wonder what seeds of change might your small rebellion plant for the women who follow, and how will their voices shape the future? Story for the coal dust cough. Miners turned factory hands. Imagine yourself in the grimy outskirts of Wigan, Lancashire, in the 1840s, where the Industrial Revolution has scarred the landscape with coal mines and cotton mills. You're a former coal miner, now a factory hand. In your late 30s, your body marked by years underground. The mines, with their choking dust and constant threat of collapse, left you with a persistent cough, coal dust cough, that rattles your chest. Unable to endure the pits after a near-fatal cave-in, you've traded one hardship for another, joining the ranks of mill workers. You rise at 4:30 a.m. in a damp, overcrowded tenement where you, your wife, and 4 children share 2 rooms. Breakfast is a thin porridge, eked out with a scrap of bread before you trudge to the cotton mill, its chimneys blending with the morning fog. The mill is a roaring beast, powered by steam engines that burn the coal you once dug. You work as a carder, feeding raw cotton into machines that comb it into fibers, a job that demands constant attention to avoid clogs or costly breakdowns. The air is thick with lint, worse than the coal dust you knew, irritating your already weakened lungs. Your wages, about 12 shillings a week, are slightly better than in the mines, but barely cover rent and food. The mill owner, a distant figure profiting from Britain's cotton boom, enforces strict rules through overseers who fine you for pausing or talking. The Factory Act of 1833, meant to regulate hours, is loosely enforced here. Your shifts stretch to 14 hours, 6 days a week. Your days are a blur of noise and motion. The carding machines, driven by steam, hum and clatter, their belts and gears a constant hazard. Last week, a man lost a finger, patched up and sent back to work. Your cough worsens in the humid, lint-filled air, a reminder of the mine's toll. Yet you press on, driven by the need to feed your family. You've learned tricks from older workers, tying a cloth over your mouth, keeping your head low to avoid the overseer's glare. Children, some as young as 8, work nearby, their small hands sorting fibers or cleaning machines, their faces pale from exhaustion. Socially, your world is bound by the mill and tenement. Your neighbors, many former miners, share your struggles, trading stories of pit life over weak tea on Sunday evenings. The community clings to old traditions ballads sung in pubs, Methodist services, offering hope of a better afterlife. But the mines and mills have reshaped your life. Closure acts pushed you from rural farms to industrial towns, trading open fields for wage slavery. You hear whispers of Chartist meetings in Wigan, where workers demand better pay and the right to vote. But the Combination Acts make such talk dangerous economically. Your labor fuels Britain's dominance, the coal you once mined powering mills that produce cotton for global markets. Yet, you see none of this wealth scraping by while mill owners build mansions. As you clear a jam from the carding machine, the overseer announces a new rule: piece rate pay, tying your wages to output. How will you survive if your cough slows you down? And what might happen if workers like you push back against this change? You're back in the Wigan cotton mill, the year still in the 1840s. The carding machines hum a constant assault on your ears. At nearly 40, your coal dust cough has deepened, each breath a struggle in the lint-choked air. The shift to piece rate pay has tightened the screws. Your wages now depend on how much cotton you card, punishing your slowing hands and failing health. Earning 10 to 11 shillings a week, you're lucky to bring home enough for bread and rent, with little left for coal to warm your tenement. Your wife, a former spinner, takes in laundry to supplement your income, her hands red from lie. Your eldest son, just 12, works as a scavenger, crawling under machines to collect cotton waste, his small frame at risk of being mangled by gears. Life outside the mill is a grim extension of its hardships. Your tenement, a crumbling brick row house, leaks in winter and swelters in summer. Meals are meager potatoes, boiled with a pinch of salt, sometimes a scrap of bacon shared among six. The community, a mix of ex-miners and mill workers, sustains you. Neighbors lend a cattle, and on rare evenings, you gather in a courtyard to hear an old miner recount tales of pit disasters, his voice a reminder of the life you escaped. Sundays bring a Methodist service where you sing hymns of endurance, though your faith wavers under the weight of daily toil. Your children attend a charity school sporadically, learning basic sums, but work often keeps them away. Socially, the mill defines your existence. You've formed bonds with other carters, sharing tricks to speed up work or avoid the overseer's fines. Talk of resistance grows. The piece rate system has sparked anger, and you hear of secret meetings where workers discuss stopping the machines. The Chartist movement, gaining traction in Lancashire, calls for universal suffrage and better wages, but organizing risks arrest under the Combination Acts. You recall the 1842 plug riots, when workers drained mill boilers to halt production, only to face troops and jail. Still, the idea of collective action stirs you, even as fear of losing your job looms economically. Your labor keeps Wigan's mills spinning, producing cotton that clothes colonies and European markets. The steam engines, fueled by coal from your old pits, drive this empire, but the wealth flows upward to mill owners and merchants. Your family teeters on the edge of the workhouse, where poverty splits families apart. Accidents in the mill are frequent. A child scavenger was crushed last month, sent home with a shilling and no hope of work. You tie a rag tighter around your face, hoping to shield your lungs, but the cough persists, a grim clock ticking down your years. During a brief break, eating a crust of bread amid the machine's roar, you overhear a plan. A group of workers, led by a fiery ex-miner named John, intends to sabotage the carding machines, slowing production to demand fixed wages. The risk is immense, blacklisting, or worse, but the piece rate system threatens your survival. As you feed cotton into the machine, its gears grinding like your thoughts, you wonder, could joining this sabotage bring relief, or will it plunge your family deeper into ruin? You stand in the Wigan cotton mill, the year edging toward 1845. Your coal dust cough, now a constant rasp, worsened by the lint-filled air. The plan to sabotage the carding machines has taken shape. John, the ex-miner, has rallied a small group, including you, to loosen belts and clog gears, hoping to force the mill owner to abandon piece rate pay. You hesitate, knowing the consequences: eviction or blacklisting, but the shrinking wages, now barely 9 shillings a week, leave your family hungry. One night, under cover of darkness, you slip a wrench into the machine's workings, slowing its pace. For a few days, production falters, and the overseer's fury grows, but the owner refuses to negotiate. By week's end, constables raid the mill, tipped off by a traitor. John is arrested, charged with malicious damage, and you escape detection. But the fear lingers. The sabotage fails, and piece rate pay remains. Life in the mill grows harder. Your cough leaves you breathless, and the overseer docks your pay for slowing down. Your son, still a scavenger, comes home with bruises from crawling under machines. Your wife's laundry work barely keeps the landlord at bay, and meals dwindle to watery broth. Yet the community endures. Neighbors share what little they have: a potato, a bit of coal land. Your wife joins a women's savings group, pooling pennies for emergencies. Sundays at the Methodist chapel offer solace, but you find more hope in whispered tales of the 10 hours movement, pushing for shorter workdays. The failed sabotage, though a setback, fuels talk of larger protests, like the 1842 plug riots, and you sense change brewing. Economically, your labor powers Wiggins mills, their cotton feeding Britain's global trade from India to the Americas. But the wealth bypasses you, enriching mill owners whose grand homes mock your tenements' decay. Socially, the mill binds you to others, your shared struggles forging resilience. You teach your son to read using a tattered Bible, hoping he'll escape this life. The charity school offers little, but a teacher's kindness keeps him dreaming. The failed sabotage draws reformers' attention writers like Friedrich Engels will soon document your plight, amplifying your struggle. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the hidden toll of industrialization. Wiggins, mills, and mines built Britain's wealth, but at the cost of workers' health and hope. Your cough, a legacy of the mines, and your sabotage, a desperate act, mirror the quiet defiance of countless others. The 10 Hours Act of 1847, limiting work hours, owes its passage to such struggles, paving the way for modern labor laws. The mills are gone now, replaced by factories or housing estates, but their legacy lives in workplace protections and the right to organize. As you feed another handful of cotton into the carding machine, you wonder, what small acts of resistance might your children carry forward, and how will they shape a world you'll never see? Story 5. Immigrant workers in American textile towns. Picture yourself in Lowell, Massachusetts, in the 1840s, a bustling hub of America's early industrial revolution. You're a young Irish immigrant, perhaps 20, who fled famine and poverty in Ireland, arriving with little but hope for a better life. The journey across the Atlantic was grueling, packed into a crowded ship with meager rations. But now you stand in the shadow of Lowell's red brick textile mills, their water wheels churning along the Merrimack River. You're one of many Irish men and women drawn to these mills, promised steady work in a land of opportunity. Your day begins at 5 a.m. in a boarding house, a cramped wooden structure where you share a room with 6 others. Breakfast is a hasty bowl of oatmeal, eaten before the mill bell calls you to a 12-hour shift. Inside the mill, the air hums with the clatter of power looms driven by water and early steam engines, a stark contrast to the rural life you left behind. You work as a bobbin boy, replacing spools of thread on spinning frames, or perhaps as a weaver's assistant, fetching supplies in the deafening weave room. The air is thick with cotton lint, stinging your eyes and settling in your lungs. A hazard you're too new to fully grasp. Wages are modest $2 to $3 a week for men. Less for women, but they're a fortune compared to Ireland's starvation wages. The mill owners, like the Lowell Company, enforce strict rules. Tardiness or talking earns a fine, and overseers, often Yankee locals, watch closely. Your work is relentless, the machines demanding constant attention. The loom's vibrations shake, the wooden floor, and accidents are common. A girl lost a finger to a shuttle last week, sent home with minimal aid. You've learned to move quickly, dodging belts and gears, guided by older immigrants who share tricks for survival, like tying a cloth over your mouth to filter dust. The mill employs many Irish, alongside Yankee girls from New England farms. But tensions simmer. Locals view you as competition, driving wages down. The 1836 Factory Act in Britain has no equivalent here. American mills operate with few regulations, and child workers, some as young as 10, toil beside you. Socially, your world centers on the Irish enclave in Lowell's Acre district. You share stories of County Cork or Galway with fellow boarders, clinging to Gaelic songs and Catholic prayers in a Protestant-dominated town. Sundays offer a brief reprieve at St. Patrick's Church, where Mass connects you to home. Yet, the boarding house rules are strict: no drinking, curfews enforced, reflecting the mill owner's paternalistic control. Economically, your labor fuels America's textile boom, with Lowell's cloth rivaling Britain's in markets from Boston to Baltimore. But the wealth stays with the owners, while you struggle to save after paying board and sending money to family in Ireland. As you wind a bobbin, you hear murmurs of discontent. Wages haven't risen despite growing production, and talk of a turnout, a strikes, circulates among the Irish workers. You wonder, can you risk joining a protest in a foreign land? And what might happen if you challenge the mill's power? You're back in the Lowell mill, the year still in the 1840s. The loom's relentless clatter filling your ears as you dart between spinning frames, replacing bobbins. At 20, you're adapting to the mill's demands, but the work is grueling, your hands raw from handling coarse thread. The lint-filled air worsens your cough, a shared affliction among workers, and the heat from the machines makes your patched clothes cling to your skin. The overseer, a stern Yankee, docks your pay for any pause, and your $2 weekly wage after boarding house fees barely covers necessities. Your sister, who arrived last month, works as a weaver, earning even less, her dreams of America dimming. Under the mill's grind, the promise of opportunity feels hollow as you toil 12 hours daily, 6 days a week. Life outside the mill is confined to the Irish Acre, where you live in a crowded boarding house run by a company matron. Meals are basic bread, molasses, and weak tea served at long tables where you swap stories of Ireland's green hills. The boarding house is a lifeline, but its rules chafe. No visitors, no loud talk, and a 10 p.m. curfew. Your community, mostly Irish immigrants, sustains you. On Saturday nights, you gather in a hidden corner of the acre, sharing smuggled whiskey and fiddle tunes, defying the mill's moral code. Yet, prejudice shadows you. Local newspapers call the Irish drunken papists, and Yankee workers resent your presence, blaming you for low wages. Socially, the mill shapes your existence. You've befriended other Irish workers, like Sean, who teaches you to adjust bobbins faster to avoid fines. talk of resistance grows. The Yankee girls staged a turnout in 1836, protesting wage cuts, and their boldness inspires you. But organizing is risky. Mill owners can blacklist strikers, leaving them jobless in a strange land. You hear of labor reformers in Boston, like Sarah Bagley, pushing for a 10-hour day, but their voices barely reach Lowell's Irish. The Catholic Church offers solace, its priest urging patience, though you crave action. Your sister whispers of a women's labor group forming in secret, stirring hope. Economically, your labor powers Lowell's mills, their cloth flooding American markets and competing with British imports. The Merrimack's water wheels and early steam engines drive this boom, but the profits enrich mill owners, not you. Your family in Ireland depends on the few pennies you send, leaving little for savings. Accidents haunt. The miller boy was caught in a belt last week, his arm broken, dismissed with $1. You wrap your hands in rags to avoid cuts, a small rebellion against a system that sees you as expendable. During a brief lunch break, eating bread amid the Looms roar, you overhear Sean planning a turnout. He speaks of halting the machines to demand fixed wages and shorter hours. As you thread another bobbin, the machines hum, drowning your thoughts. You ponder, will joining this turnout bring change, or will it cost you the fragile foothold you've gained in this new world? You stand in the Lowell Mill, the year nearing 1847, your hands steady, but your heart racing as the turnout takes shape. Sean and a dozen Irish workers, including you, have planned to stop the machines, demanding a 10-hour day and wages restored to $2.50 a week. The mill's relentless pastewell shifts, lynched air, and constant overseer scrutiny has pushed you to the edge. You join the strike, heart pounding, as the factory bell rings and the spinning frames fall silent. Outside, you and your fellow workers, men and women, Irish and a few Yankees, form a picket line, chanting for fair treatment. For a moment, you imagine a life with time to rest, to write to your family in Ireland without exhaustion clouding your words. The turnout collapses within days. The mill owners, backed by Lowell's elite, hire replacements. New immigrants, desperate for work, call in local police. Sean is blacklisted, forced to leave town, and you return to the mill, wages unchanged, under stricter oversight. The defeat stings, but it fuels a broader movement. By 1848, labor groups like the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association, led by figures like Sarah Bagley, will push for state laws limiting work hours, inspired by strikes like yours. Your sister, emboldened, joins a secret women's union, whispering of future protests. Life in the mill grinds on. Your cough deepens, a reminder of the lint-filled air, and your sister's health falters from long hours. The boarding house remains a refuge, where you share stories and mend clothes with other Irish women, pooling pennies for emergencies. Sundays at St. Patrick's Church offer solace, but you find more hope in labor pamphlets passed in secret, calling for workers' rights. The Auchars community grows stronger, with Irish festivals defying Yankee prejudice. Your fiddle tunes, a quiet rebellion against the mill's control. Economically, Lowell's mills drive America's textile industry, their cloth clothing a growing nation. But the wealth bypasses you, flowing to owners whose mansions line the Merrimack. Your wages, barely $2 after deductions, keep you tethered to the mill, unable to save for a better life. Socially, the strike tightens bonds among workers. You teach your sister to read using a borrowed Bible, hoping she escape this toil. The failed turnout draws attention from reformers, whose writings will soon spotlight the Irish struggle, amplifying your voice. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the resilience of immigrant workers, whose labor built America's industrial might while their protests sowed seeds of change. Lowell's mills, now museums, stand as testaments to your endurance. Your turnout, though crushed, helped spark labor reforms, from shorter workdays to workplace safety laws that echo in modern protections. The Irish Acre, once a slum, shaped a community that endures in America's cultural fabric. As you wind another bobbin, you wonder what small acts of defiance might your sister carry forward, and how will they shape a nation still finding its way. Story 6, the machine accidents that maimed generations. Step into the noisy chaos of a Manchester cotton mill in the 1850s, where you, a 30-year-old worker, navigate the dangers of the Industrial Revolution's machinery. You're a spinner, tending two spinning mules that transform raw cotton into thread, a job that demands precision in a hazardous environment. The mill, a massive brick structure along the Irwell River, hums with steam-powered machines. Their belts and gears worry relentlessly. You rise at 4:30 a.m. in a damp tenement, sharing a single room with your wife and 2 children. Breakfast is a hurried slice of bread and weak tea before the factory bell summons you to a 14-hour shift. Your wages, about 15 shillings a week, barely cover rent and food, leaving nothing for savings. Inside the mill, the air is thick with cotton lint, stinging your eyes and clogging your lungs, a constant threat to your health. The spinning mules, stretching 50 feet across the room, are marvels of engineering, but their unguarded belts and rollers are deadly. You've seen fingers crushed, scalps torn, and limbs mangled when workers, exhausted or careless, get caught in the machinery. Last month, a young boy lost an arm, sent home with a shilling and no future in the mill. The Factory Act of 1844 mandates some safety measures, like fencing off gears, but enforcement is spotty, and mill owners prioritize production over compliance. Overseers, wielding fines and shouts, keep you moving. Docking, pay for any pause. Your work requires constant vigilance, guiding cotton through the mules, repairing brakes, and dodging the machine's moving parts. You've learned survival tricks from older spinners. Keep your sleeves rolled up, tie back your hair, and never lean too close to the rollers. Yet, exhaustion makes errors inevitable, especially late in the shift. Children, some as young as 9, work as scavengers, crawling under machines to clear lint, their small bodies at risk of being crushed. The din of the mules drowns out conversation, forcing you to rely on gestures to communicate with coworkers socially. Your life is tied to the mill and the tight-knit community of workers in Manchester's slums. Your neighbors, many from rural villages displaced by enclosures, share your struggles, trading stories of farm life over Sunday tea. The Methodist chapel offers solace, its sermons preaching endurance, though you hear whispers of Chartist meetings demanding workers' rights. Economically, your labor fuels Britain's cotton empire, with Manchester's mills supplying cloth to global markets, from India to America. Yet, the wealth flows to mill owners, whose grand homes contrast with your crumbling tenement as you guide a strand of cotton through the mule. You notice a new machine installed nearby, its gears unfenced and faster than the old ones. The overseer boasts of its efficiency, but you see danger in its unguarded parts. Rumors spread of another accidental woman caught in a similar machine, her hand mangled. You wonder, how long can you avoid the machine's grasp, and what might happen if workers demand safer conditions? You're back in the Manchester cotton mill, the year still in the 1850s. The spinning mules, relentless whir, filling the air as you work through another grueling shift. At 30, your hands are scarred from years of threading cotton, and your back aches from bending over the machines. The new, faster spinning mule, installed last week, looms nearby, its unfenced gears a constant threat. The lint-filled air irritates your lungs, sparking a cough that echoes the brown lung plaguing older workers. Your wages, now 14 shillings, due to a recent cut, stretch thin to feed your family, forcing your wife to take in sewing for extra pennies. The overseer, a sharp-tongued man, hovers, fining you for a moment's rest, while the mill owner, rarely seen, reaps profits from your toil. Life outside the mill is a struggle in Manchester's Ancoats slums. Your tenement, a damp two-room hovel, houses your family of 4, its walls blackened by factory smoke. Meals are sparse potato stew or bread with dripping, shared around a single candle. The community of workers, many former farmers, sustains. You, neighbors, lend a kettle or share a scrap of coal, and on rare evenings, you gather to sing old ballads, a fleeting escape from the mill's grind. Sundays at the chapel offer comfort, though the preacher's calls for patience clash with growing talk of resistance. Your eldest daughter, 10, has joined the mill as a scavenger, her small hands darting under machines, a daily risk that haunts you socially. The mill binds you to others. You've bonded with fellow spinners, like Thomas, who shares tips on avoiding the mule's rollers. Talk of accidents dominates last week. A woman's arm was crushed by the new machine, dismissed with a pittance. The Factory Act of 1844 promised safety, but unfenced gears and lax inspections betray its intent. You hear of trade unions forming in secret, inspired by the Chartists, but the combination acts make organizing perilous. Workers whisper of the 1844 Rochdale strike, where spinners demanded safer machines, only to face arrests. Still, the new machines, dangers, fuel anger, and Thomas speaks of a petition to demand guards on all gears. Economically, your labor powers Manchester's mills, their cotton feeding global markets and enriching Britain's empire. Yet you see none of this wealth scraping by while mill owners build opulent villas. The new machine boosts output but increases accidents, a trade-off you bear. Your daughter's cough mirrors yours, a grim reminder of the mill's toll. You tie a rag tighter around your face, hoping to shield your lungs, but the lint seeps through. Education for your children is a distant dream. A charity school teaches basic reading, but work consumes their days. During a brief break, eating cold porridge amid the mule's roar, you overhear Thomas planning to present the petition to the owner. He speaks of halting work if demands aren't met, a risky move that could spark a strike. The idea stirs hope, but fear lingers. Losing your job could mean the workhouse. As you thread the mule, its gears grinding, you ponder, could joining this fight make the mill safer, or will it cost your family everything? You stand in the Manchester cotton mill, the year now 1855. Your cough worsening as you work beside the dangerous new spinning mule. The petition for safer machines, led by Thomas, has grown into a bold plan. A work stoppage to demand fenced gears and restored wages. At 30, you're weary but resolved, driven by the memory of the woman whose arm was mangled and your daughter's. Daily risk as a scavenger. You join the strike, heart pounding, as the factory bell rings and the mules fall silent. Outside, you and dozens of workers, men and women, form a picket line, chanting for safety and fair pay. For a moment, you envision a mill where machines don't maim, where your children might know a safer life. The strike collapses within a week. The mill owner, backed by Manchester's magistrates, hires strikebreakers, desperate workers from nearby slums and calls in constables. Thomas is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts, and you return to work, wages unchanged, under harsher oversight. The new machine's gears remain unfenced, and another accident occurs days later. Boy's hand crushed, his family left destitute. Yet, the strike's failure sparks reform. By 1859, stricter factory acts will mandate better machine guards, a legacy of protests like yours. Your daughter, inspired by the strike, begins reading labor pamphlets, dreaming of a future beyond. The mill, life grinds on. Your cough, now chronic, signals a shortened life, and your wife's health falters from sewing late into the night. Your tenement remains a cold, damp prison, but the community endures. Neighbors share broth or mend clothes together, and your daughter learns to write her name, taught by a kind neighbor. Sundays at the chapel offer fleeting peace, but you find more hope in growing union talk. Despite the risks, the mill's dangers persist. A friend lost an eye to a flying shuttle. Dismissed without compensation, but your resolve strengthens economically. Manchester's mills drive Britain's cotton trade, clothing empires, while you struggle to afford a winter coat. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the mill's dangers. Socially, the strike forges tighter bonds among workers. You carve a small mark into the mule's frame, a quiet defiance against its threat. The failed strike draws reformers' attention. Figures like Charles Dickens will soon write of your plight, amplifying your struggle. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the human cost of industrial progress. Manchester's mills built wealth on the broken bodies of workers, whose quiet resistance forced safety reforms. The Factory Acts, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern workplace protections. The mills, now converted or crumbling, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though defeated, helped ensure machines would one day be safer, sparing future generations. As you guide cotton through the mule, its gears still unguarded, you wonder, what small acts of courage might your daughter carry forward, and how will they shape a safer world? Story 7. Sunday Rest Denied. The Relentless Factory Bella. Imagine yourself in Bolton, Lancashire, in the 1850s. A textile town where the Industrial Revolution's pulse beats through sprawling cotton mills. You're a 28-year-old weaver, one of thousands drawn to the mills by the promise of steady work after rural enclosures left your family landless. You wake at 5 a.m. in a cramped, soot-stained terraced house shared with your husband and 3 children. The factory bell, a harsh clang that governs your life, allows no lingering over your meager breakfast of bread and weak tea. Sundays, the one day you long for rest, are increasingly claimed by the mill, as owners demand extra shifts to meet rising cotton demand. Your wages, about 10 shillings a week, barely cover rent and potatoes, leaving no margin for rest or leisure. The mill is a cavernous brick fortress, its steam-powered looms roaring with mechanical fury. You tend to looms, weaving cotton into cloth, your hands moving swiftly to avoid thread breaks that could cost you a day's pay. The air is thick with lint, settling in your lungs and sparking a cough that worsens each year. The Factory Act of 1850 limits your workday to 10.5 hours, but mill owners exploit loopholes, scheduling cleaning days on Sundays that keep you working. Overseers wielding fines and sharp words ensure relentless pace, while the mill owner, a wealthy figure rarely seen, profits from your toil. Accidents are frequent. A child's hand was caught in a loom last week, sent home with a pittance. Your work is monotonous, yet exhausting. The loom's vibrations jarring your bones. You've learned to tie scarves over your mouth to filter dust and to signal co-workers over the noise, but exhaustion makes errors common. Children, some as young as 10, work as piecers, scurrying under machines to mend threads, their small bodies at risk. The loss of Sunday rest gnaws at you. It's the only time for chapel, mending clothes, or tending a tiny garden plot for vegetables. Without it, your family's fragile rhythm falters, and your children's health suffers from malnutrition and overwork socially. Your life revolves around the mill and Bolton's working-class community. Neighbors, many former farmers, share your struggles, trading scraps of food or stories of rural life over weak tea. The Methodist chapel, once a Sunday refuge, is harder to attend when mills demand 7-day weeks. You hear whispers of reform trade unions and Chartist rallies calling for workers' rights, but the combination acts make organizing risky. Economically, your labor fuels Britain's cotton empire, with Bolton's mills supplying cloth to global markets, from India to the Americas. Yet, the wealth bypasses you, flowing to owners whose grand homes mock your tenements, decay. As you weave, you overhear grumbling about the Sunday shifts. A group of workers, led by a bold weaver named Eliza, plans to petition the owner for a guaranteed day of rest. The idea stirs hope, but the risk of retaliation looms. You wonder, can you join this fight to reclaim your Sunday? Or will defying the factory bell cost you everything? You're back in the Bolton mill, the year still in the 1850s. The loom's rhythmic clatter, a constant reminder of your unending toil. At 28, your hands are calloused from weaving, and your cough worsened by lint-filled air. Hints at a future of illness. The Sunday shifts have become routine, stripping away your only day for rest or family. Your wages, now 9 shillings, after a cut blamed on market fluctuations, force your eldest son, just 11, to join the mill as a piecer, his small hands darting under looms at risk of injury. The overseer, a stern man with a ledger, finds you for pausing to adjust a thread, and the mill owner, distant and wealthy, ignores your plight. The factory act's promise of shorter hours feels hollow when Sunday work is demanded. Life outside the mill is a struggle to survive. Your terraced house, damp and cold, houses your family of 5, its single fireplace barely warming the room. Meals are thin oatmeal or potato stew, rarely meat-stretched to feed growing children. The community of mill workers, many displaced from rural lives, sustains you. Neighbors share a kettle or a scrap of cloth, and on rare evenings you gather to sing hymns, a faint echo of the Sundays you've lost. The Methodist chapel, once a weekly refuge, is now a rare visit, replaced by mandatory mill cleaning shifts. Your children's charity school lessons are sporadic, their education sacrificed to work. Socially, the mill defines your world. You've bonded with other weavers, like Eliza, who shares tricks to speed up looms and avoid fines. Talk of the lost Sunday grows heated. Workers recount the 1847 10 Hours Act, meant to protect rest, but mill owners skirted with voluntary overtime. Eliza speaks of secret union meetings, inspired by Chartist calls for better conditions, though the combination axe brand such gatherings illegal. You recall the 1842 plug riots, when workers stopped mills across Lancashire only to face arrests. Still, the loss of Sunday fuels anger, and Eliza's petition gains support, demanding a guaranteed day of rest. Economically, your labor powers Bolton's mills, their cotton clothing global markets, while you struggle to mend your children's rags. The steam-powered looms boost output, but the profits enrich owners, not you. Accidents haunt the mill. A boy was scalded by a steam pipe last month, dismissed with no aid. You wrap your hands in rags to avoid cuts, a small act of defiance. Your son's cough mirrors yours, a grim reminder of the mill's toll. Education remains a dream. You teach him to read using a tattered hymn book, hoping for a better future. During a brief lunch break, eating cold porridge beside your loom, you hear Eliza planning to present the petition. She speaks of refusing Sunday work if demands aren't met, a risky move that could spark a strike. The idea ignites hope, but fear lingers. Losing your job could mean starvation. As you thread your loom, its hum drowning your thoughts, you ponder, could joining this fight restore your Sunday, or will it plunge your family into deeper hardship? You stand in the Bolton mill, the year nearing 1857, your body weary from endless weaving and your cough deepening in the lynch-oaked air. Eliza's petition for Sunday rest has grown into a bold plan, a strike to halt the looms and demand a guaranteed day off. At 28, you're driven by the loss of family time and your son's growing exhaustion as a piecer. You join the strike, heart racing, as the factory bell rings and the weaving shed falls silent. Outside, you and dozens of workers, mostly women, form a picket line, chanting for rest and fair treatment. For a moment, you envision Sundays at the chapel, mending clothes with your children, free from the mill's grip. The strike collapses in days. The mill owner, backed by Bolton's magistrates, hires strikebreakers, desperate workers from nearby towns, and calls in constables. Eliza is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts, and you return to work. Sunday shifts unchanged under stricter oversight. The defeat is crushing, but it fuels reform. By 1860, stronger factory acts will enforce rest days, a legacy of protests like yours. Your son, inspired by Eliza, begins attending secret union meetings, whispering of workers' rights. Life in the mill grinds on. Your cough signals a shortened life, and your husband's health falters from overwork. Your tenement remains cold and damp, but the community endures. Neighbors share broth or mend clothes together, and you teach your son to write his name. A small victory. The mill's dangers persist. A girl lost a finger to a loom, dismissed with nothing but your resolve. Grows. Bolton's mills drive Britain's cotton trade, their clothed clothing empires, while you struggle to afford a winter shawl. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the mill's relentless bell. Socially, the strike strengthens bonds among workers. You carve a small cross into your loom's frame, a quiet defiance against its demands. The failed strike draws reformers, attention writers, like Elizabeth Gaskell, document your plight, amplifying your voice. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the toll of industrialization's relentless pace. Bolton's mills built wealth on workers, sacrificed rest, but your protest helped secure rest days for future generations. The Factory Acts, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern labor laws, ensuring time for family and faith. The mills, now museums or ruins, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though defeated, sowed seeds of change, echoed in today's workplace protections. As you weave another yard of cloth, the factory bell tolling, you wonder, what small acts of defiance might your son carry forward? And how will they shape a world where rest is a right, not a privilege? Story 8. The Workhouse Threat. Families torn apart. Imagine yourself in Preston, Lancashire, in the 1850s, where the Industrial Revolution's cotton mills dominate the skyline, their chimneys spewing smoke over cramped tenements. You're a 35-year-old cotton spinner, a widower raising 2 children, alone after your wife succumbed to consumption, worsened by years in the mill's lint-filled air. You rise at 4 a.m. in a damp, one-room tenement, where you and your children, aged 9 and 12, share a straw mattress. Breakfast is a crust of bread and watery tea, barely enough to fuel the 14-hour shift ahead. The mill's bell, a relentless taskmaster, summons you to work, where your wages 13 shillings a week teeter on the edge of survival. One illness or accident away from the dreaded workhouse. The mill is a deafening maze of spinning mules, powered by steam engines that shake the floor. You guide cotton through the mules, your scarred hands threading needles with practiced speed, but the unguarded machinery is a constant threat. A coworker lost a finger last week, dismissed with no pay. The air, thick with cotton dust, irritates your lungs and your cough. A legacy of years in the mill deepens daily. The Factory Act of 1850 limits shifts to 10.5 hours, but overtime and lax enforcement keep you working longer. Overseers, armed with fines, ensure no pause, while the mill owner, a distant figure, grows rich from your labor. Your children work beside you, your daughter, as a scavenger, crawling under machines to clear lint, and your son as a piecer, tying broken threads. Their wages, a shilling each, are crucial, but their small bodies are at risk in the mill's chaos. You've taught them to tie rags around their hands to avoid cuts, but exhaustion makes accidents likely. The workhouse looms as a threat. A single missed paycheck could send your family to that grim institution where families are split apart, children separated from parents, and labor is punishing. Socially, your life is bound to Preston's working-class community. Neighbors, many mill workers, share your fears, trading scraps of food or tales of rural life before the mills. Sundays offer a brief escape to a Baptist chapel where hymns provide solace, but work often encroaches. Even on this day, you hear whispers of trade unions forming, inspired by Chartist ideals, but the combination acts make organizing dangerous. Economically, your labor fuels Preston's cotton industry. Its cloth exported worldwide, yet you struggle to afford coal. The workhouse, a symbol of failure, haunts every decision as you thread a mule. You overhear talk of a wage cut despite rising production. Workers, led by a spinner named James, plan to petition the owner to maintain pay and limit hours, hoping to avoid the workhouse's shadow. The idea stirs hope, but the risk of retaliation, dismissal, or worse looms large. You wonder, can you join this fight to keep your family together? Or will defying the mill push you closer to the workhouse's gates? Mill, the year still in the 1850s. The spinning mules roar a constant assault as you thread cotton with weary hands. At 35, your cough worsens in the lynch-choked air, a grim reminder of your wife's fate. The rumored wage cut has hit. Your pay drops to 11 shillings a week, barely enough for rent and thin porridge for your children. Your daughter, 9, and son, 12, toil as scavenger and piecer, their faces pale from exhaustion and hunger. The overseer, a harsh man with a stick, finds you for a moment's pause, and the mill owner, profiting from global cotton demand, ignores your plight. The factory act's limits are undermined by forced overtime, and the workhouse's threat grows closer with each docked shilling. Life outside the mill is a desperate struggle. Your tenement, a damp hovel in Preston's slums, leaks in the rain, its single room barely warmed by a meager fire. Meals are sparse bread or potato stew, shared among 3, with no money for meat. The community of mill workers sustains you. Neighbors lend a candle or share a scrap of bacon. And on rare evenings, you swap stories of lost farms. The Baptist chapel, once a Sunday refuge, is often skipped for extra shifts to avoid the workhouse, where families are torn apart, children sent to separate wards. Your children's charity school lessons are rare, their reading limited to a worn Bible you use to teach them letters. Socially, the mill shapes your existence. You've bonded with other spinners, like James, who shares tricks to avoid machine. Jam's talk of the wage cut fuels anger. Workers recall the 1853 Preston strike, crushed by arrests and blacklisting. James's petition gains traction, demanding no cuts and shorter hours to keep families from the workhouse. The combination acts make such plans risky, but Chartist ideals of workers' rights inspire hope. You hear of reformers like Richard Cobden advocating for labor laws, but their voices feel distant in Preston's grime. Economically, your labor drives Preston's mills, their cotton clothing empires from America to India. Yet the wealth flows to owners whose mansions mock your poverty. Accidents are constant, Your daughter narrowly escaped a spinning mule's gears, her rag-wrapped hands trembling. The workhouse's shadow looms larger. A neighbor's family was sent there last month, their children separated. You tie a cloth tighter around your face, hoping to shield your lungs, but the dust seeps through. Your son's cough mirrors yours, a sign of the mill's toll during a brief break. Eating a crust of bread amid the mule's din, you hear James planning to present the petition. He speaks of a work stoppage if demands aren't met, a dangerous move that could spark a strike. The idea kindles hope, but fear grips Ulysses. Your job could mean the workhouse for your children. As you thread another mule, its gears grinding, you ponder, could joining this fight save your family? Or will it push you into the workhouse's grasp? You stand in the Preston Mill, the year nearing 1858. Your cough now a deep rasp as you work among the spinning mules. James's petition to maintain wages and limit hours has ignited a desperate plan, a strike to keep families from the workhouse. At 35, you're driven by your children's gaunt faces and the memory of your wife, lost to the mill's harsh conditions. You join the strike, heart pounding, as the factory bell rings and the mules fall silent. Outside, you and dozens of workers, men and women, form a picket line, chanting for fair pay and shorter shifts. For a moment, you envision a life where your children aren't at risk of the workhouse, where you can afford more than bread and prayers. The strike collapses within days. The mill owner, backed by Preston's magistrates, hires strikebreakers, workers from nearby towns, and calls in constables. James is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts, and you return to work, wages still cut under stricter oversight. The workhouse looms closer. Another accidental boy's leg crushed by a mule reminds you of the mill's dangers. Yet the strike's failure fuels reform. By 1860, factory acts will strengthen protections, and the 1853 Preston strike's legacy will inspire unions, easing the workhouse threat for future families. Life in the mill is unrelenting. Your cough signals a shortened life, and your children's health falters, their small bodies worn by scavenging and piecing. Your tenement remains a cold, damp prison, but the community endures. Neighbors share soup or mend clothes together, and you teach your daughter to read using a tattered hymn book, hoping she escape this life. Sundays at the Baptist chapel, when possible, bring solace, but secret union pamphlets offer more hope, whispering of workers' rights. The mill's dangers persist. Your son's sleeve caught in a gear, narrowly escaping injury, but your resolve grows. Economically, Preston's mills power Britain's cotton trade, their cloth clothing. Global markets, while you struggle to buy shoes for your children. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the mill's dangers. Socially, the strike strengthens worker bonds. You carve a small mark into the mule's frame, a quiet defiance against its threat. Reformers like Charles Dickens, moved by failed strikes, will soon amplify your struggle, drawing attention to the workhouse's cruelty. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the human cost of industrialization's relentless demands. Preston's mills built wealth on workers' fears of the workhouse, but your protest helped secure labor reforms. The factory acts and growing unions, born of countless defeats, laid the foundation for modern protections, ensuring families stay together. The mills, now gone or repurposed, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though crushed, sowed seeds of change, echoed in today's labor laws. As you guide cotton through the mule, the workhouse's shadow lingering, you wonder, what small acts of courage might your children carry forward, and how will they shape a world free from such fear? Story 9. The smoke that choked air pollution in industrial cities. Picture yourself in Sheffield, England, in the 1860s, a city cloaked in smoke from the steel forges and factories that drive the Industrial Revolution. You're a 32-year-old cutler, grinding knives in a workshop powered by steam engines, your lungs already scarred from years of breathing the city's polluted air. You wake at 5 a.m. in a cramped tenement in Attercliffe, where you, your wife, and 3 children share 2 rooms. The air outside is thick with coal smoke from nearby chimneys, stinging your eyes and coating your clothes in soot. Breakfast is a hurried bowl of porridge, eaten to the sound of coughing ears and your children's before. You trudge to the workshop, its bellowing furnaces adding to Sheffield's smog. The workshop is a haze of dust and smoke. The steam-driven grindstones worry as you sharpen blades. The air, laden with coal particles and metal dust, worsens your cough, a common ailment among cutlers known as grinder's lung. Your wages, about 16 shillings a week, barely cover rent and food, leaving no money for doctors' visits. The Factory Act of 1864 mandates ventilation in some workplaces, but small workshops like yours skirt regulations, prioritizing output over health. Overseers push you to work faster, fining you for pauses, while the master cutler, profiting from Sheffield's steel boom, rarely visits. Your work is grueling, requiring precision despite the choking air. Grindstones driven by steam belts. Our unforgiving one slip could cost a finger or worse. Last week, a co-worker's hand was mangled, sent home with a shilling. You've learned to wrap a cloth around your face, a trick from older cutlers, but it barely filters the dust. Children, some as young as 12, work as apprentices, sweeping metal shavings and inhaling the same toxic air. The city's pollution seeps into every aspect of life. Your children's clothes are gray with soot, and the River Don, blackened by factory waste, poisons the water you fetch. Socially, your life centers on Sheffield's working-class neighborhoods. Neighbors, many steelworkers or cutlers, share your struggles, trading stories of cleaner rural days over weak tea. Sundays at the Wesleyan Chapel offer solace, though the preacher's voice competes with your cough. You hear whispers of sanitary reformers like Edwin Chadwick pushing for cleaner air, but their ideas haven't reached Sheffield's slums. Economically, your labor fuels Sheffield's steel industry, crafting tools and weapons for global markets, yet you see none of the wealth living in the shadow of factory owners' grand homes. As you grind a blade, the workshop's smoke thickens, and you hear of a new factory nearby, its chimneys adding to the city's smog. Workers grumble about worsening health, and a cutler named William plans a meeting to demand better ventilation. The idea stirs hope, but the risk of dismissal looms. You wonder, can you join this fight for cleaner air, or will challenging the workshop push your family deeper into poverty? You're back in the Sheffield Cutlery Workshop, the year still in the 1860s. The grindstones screech and the steam engines hum, filling the smoky air. At 32, your grinder's lung worsens, each breath a struggle in the dust-laden workshop. The new factory's chimneys have thickened Sheffield's smog, blanketing the city in a haze that darkens even midday. Your wages, now 15 shillings, after a cut blamed on foreign competition, force your eldest son, 13, to join you as an apprentice, grinding blades and coughing like you. The overseer, a gruff man with a ledger, docks your pay for pausing to clear your lungs, while the master cutler, reaping profits from global steel demand, ignores the workshop's toxic air. Life outside is choked by pollution. Your tenement, a damp hovel in Attercliffe, reeks of soot, its windows gray with factory grime. Meals are meager bread, potatoes, and thin broth stretched to feed 5. The community of workers sustains you. Neighbors share coal or swap tales of rural air, now a distant memory. Sundays at the Wesleyan Chapel are rare as overtime shifts encroach, but when you attend, the preacher's calls for endurance clash with your growing anger at the smoke that sickens your children. Your son's charity school lessons are sporadic, his reading limited to a tattered Bible you use to teach him. Socially, the workshop binds you to others. You've bonded with William, who shares tricks to ease the grindstone's strain. Talk of pollution grows urgent. Last month, a cutler died of lung disease, dismissed as weakness by the overseer. The Factory Act's ventilation rules are ignored here, and the Public Health Act of 1848, meant to curb urban filth, has little effect in Sheffield's slums. William speaks of a trade union forming in secret, inspired by sanitary reformers, but the Combination Acts make such plans perilous. You recall the 1866 Sheffield outrages, where workers sabotaged tools to protest conditions, only to face arrests. Economically, your labor powers Sheffield's steel empire, crafting knives and razors for markets from America to India. Yet, the wealth flows to factory owners whose mansions gleam beyond the smog. The city's polluted air and water sicken your family. A neighbor's child fell ill from drinking river water, tainted by factory waste. You tie a thicker cloth around your face, but the dust and smoke seep through. Your son's cough mirrors yours, a grim sign of the workshop's toll. During a brief break, coughing over a crust of bread, you hear William planning to present a petition for better ventilation and smoke controls. He speaks of halting work if demands aren't met, a risky move that could spark a strike. The idea kindles hope, but fear grips you. Listening. Your job could mean starvation. As you grind another blade, the smoke stinging your eyes, you ponder, could joining this fight clear the air for your children, or will it plunge you deeper into Sheffield's grimy poverty? You stand in the Sheffield Cutlery Workshop, the year nearing 1867. Your grinder's lung, now a constant wheeze as you work amid choking dust and smoke. William's petition for ventilation and smoke controls has sparked a bold plan, a strike, to demand cleaner air and restored wages. At 32, you're driven by your son's worsening cough and the memory of the cutler who died, his lungs ruined by the workshop's air. You join the strike, heart pounding, as the workshop's grindstones fall silent. Outside, you and dozens of workers, men and young apprentices, form a picket line, chanting for breathable air and fair pay. For a moment, you envision a Sheffield where your children can breathe without pain, free from the smog's grip. The strike collapses within days. The master cutler, backed by Sheffield's magistrates, hires strikebreakers, desperate men from nearby slums, and calls in constables. William is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts, and you return to work, wages unchanged, the air as toxic as ever. Another accident, a boy's hand caught in a grindstone, underscores the workshop's dangers, yet the strike's failure fuels reform. By 1875, the Public Health Act will push for cleaner air, and trade unions will grow, inspired by your stand, easing the choke of industrial pollution. Life grinds on. Your cough signals a shortened life, and your wife's health falters from washing clothes in polluted water. Your tenement remains a sooty prison, but the community endures. Neighbors share broth or mend clothes together, and you teach your son to write his name, hoping he'll escape this life. Sundays at the Wesleyan Chapel, when possible, bring solace, but secret union pamphlets offer more hope, whispering of cleaner cities. The workshop's dangers persist. A friend's eyes were burned by metal dust. Dismissed with nothing but your resolve strengthens. Economically, Sheffield's steel industry drives global trade, its tools shaping empires while you struggle to afford a winter coat. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the workshop's toxic air. Socially, the strike forges tighter bonds among workers. You carve a small line into the grindstone's frame, a quiet defiance against its threat. Reformers like Charles Dickens, moved by such struggles, will soon amplify your plight, spotlighting the smog's toll. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the cost of industrialization's unchecked pollution. Sheffield's forges built wealth on workers' ruined lungs, but your protest helped spark air quality reforms. The Public Health Acts and growing unions, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern environmental protections. The workshops, now gone or repurposed, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though defeated, sowed seeds of change, echoed in today's cleaner cities. As you grind another blade, the smoke still choking, you wonder what small acts of courage might your son carry forward, and how will they shape a world where air is a right, not a poison. Story 10. Child laborers. The tiny hands of industry step into the gritty heart of Birmingham, England, in the 1860s, where the Industrial Revolution's factories and workshops churn out goods for a global empire. You're a 10-year-old child, laborer, working in a brass foundry to help your family survive. You wake at 4:30 a.m. in a cramped, soot-covered tenement, sharing a single room with your parents and 4 siblings. Breakfast is a scrap of bread and a sip of weak tea, barely enough to quiet your growling stomach before the factory whistle calls you to a 12-hour shift. Your wages, a mere 2 shillings a week, are vital to keep your family from the workhouse. Where poverty splits kin apart, the foundry is a hellish place, its furnaces roaring with heat and filling the air with acrid smoke. You work as a runner, carrying molten brass in small crucibles to molders. Your hands blistered despite the rags you wrap around them. The air is thick with metal dust, stinging your eyes and throat, and the floor trembles with the clank of steam-powered presses. The Factory Act of 1864 limits children's work to 6 hours daily, but enforcement is lax, and your employer demands longer hours, claiming you're apprenticed. Overseers, quick with a cuff or fine, keep you moving, while the foundry owner, a distant figure, profits from Birmingham's metal trade. Your tasks are dangerous for a child's small frame. You dart between heavy machines, dodging spills of molten metal that could burn or maim. Last week, a boy your age lost a finger to a press, sent home with no aid. You've learned to tie your rags tighter and stay alert, taught by older children who've survived years in the foundry. The noise drowns out talk, and the heat saps your strength, but stopping risks a beating. Your parents, both factory workers, rely on your earnings, their own wages barely covering rent in Birmingham's slums. Socially, your world is the foundry and the tenements' crowded alleys. Your neighbors, mostly factory families, share your hardships, trading scraps of food or stories of rural lives lost to enclosures. Sundays at a nonconformist chapel offer brief solace, though work often steals this day. You hear whispers of reformers like Lord Shaftesbury pushing to limit child labor, but their voices feel far from your reality. Economically, your tiny hands fuel Birmingham's brass industry, crafting goods for markets from London to India, yet you see no wealth, living in the shadow of owners' grand homes. As you carry a crucible, the heat searing your hands, you overhear older workers grumbling about long hours for children. A molder named Sarah plans a petition to enforce the Factory Act's limits, hoping to protect young workers like you. The idea sparks hope, but fear lingers, defying the overseer could cost your job. You wonder, can you support this fight for shorter hours, or will it risk your family's fragile survival? You're back in the Birmingham brass foundry, the year still in the 1860s. The furnaces roar and the steam presses clank, filling your ears as you carry a crucible of molten brass. At 10, your hands are scarred and your cough, sparked by metal dust, worsens daily. The overseer's demand for longer hours flouts the Factory Act, pushing your shifts to 12 hours, leaving you dizzy with exhaustion. Your 2 shillings a week, vital to your family's survival, shrink as fines for spilling brass eat into your pay. Your mother, a nail maker, and father, a foundry laborer, work grueling hours, their wages barely covering the tenement's rent. The workhouse's shadow looms, a place where you'd be torn from your parents. Life outside the foundry is grim. Your tenement, a damp hovel in Birmingham's slums, reeks of soot and mold, its single room stifling for 7. Meals are thin potato or bread with dripping, shared among siblings, with meat a rare dream. The community of factory workers sustains you. Neighbors lend a candle or share a scrap of bacon, and on rare evenings you hear tales of lost fields. Sundays at the chapel are stolen by extra shifts, but when you go, hymns offer fleeting comfort. Your schooling, a few hours at a charity school, teaches basic letters, but work consumes your days, leaving you to practice writing in the dirt. Socially, the foundry shapes your world. You've bonded with other child laborers, like Tom, who teaches you to dodge the press's gears. Talk of long hours grows heated. Last month, a girl was burned by molten brass, dismissed with nothing. Sarah's petition gains support, demanding shorter hours for children and better ventilation. The combination acts make organizing risky, but reformers like Lord Shaftesbury inspire hope. Their calls for child labor laws whispered among workers. You recall the 1861 Birmingham protests, where workers demanded better conditions. only to face arrests. Economically, your labor powers Birmingham's brass trade, crafting lamps and fittings for global markets. Yet, the wealth flows to foundry owners whose mansions mock your poverty. The foundry's dangers are constanter sleeve, caught in a press, narrowly escaping injury. You wrap your hands tighter, but the dust seeps into your lungs. Your siblings' coughs echo yours, a sign of the foundry's toll. The workhouse haunts every misstep. A neighbor's family was sent there, their children separated during a brief break. Panting over a crust of bread, you hear Sarah planning to present the petition. She speaks of refusing extra hours if demands aren't met, a bold move that could spark a strike. The idea stirs hope, but fear grips you. Losing your job could mean the workhouse. As you carry another crucible, its heat burning through your rags, you ponder, could joining this fight give you a childhood, or will it push your family into the workhouse's grasp? You stand in the Birmingham brass foundry, the year nearing 1868, your small frame trembling from exhaustion and the weight of Sarah's plan. Her petition for shorter hours and safer conditions for child laborers like you has grown into a strike. At 10, driven by the burns on your hands and the memory of the girl scarred by molten brass, you join the protest, heart racing as the factory whistle sounds and the presses fall silent. Outside, you and dozens of workers, including other children, form a picket line, chanting for a 6-hour day and better air. For a moment, you dream of time to play or learn, free from the foundry's dangers and the workhouse's threat. The strike collapses within days. The foundry owner, backed by Birmingham's magistrates, hires desperate replacements children from nearby slums and calls in constables. Sarah is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts, and you return to work, hours unchanged, under harsher oversight. Another accidental boy's foot crushed by a pressery reminds you of the foundry's perils. Yet, the strike's failure fuels reform. By 1878, the Factory Act will enforce limits on child labor, a legacy of protests like yours. Your older brother, inspired by Sarah, begins reading labor pamphlets, dreaming of a future beyond the foundry. Life grinds on. Your cough deepens, a sign of the dust's toll, and your mother's health falters from nail-making. Your tenement remains a cold, damp prison, but the community endures. Neighbors share soup or teach you letters, and you scratch words in the dirt, hoping for a better life. Sundays at the chapel, when possible, bring hymns, but union pamphlets offer more hope, whispering of workers' rights. The foundry's dangers persist. Your sister's hand was singed by a crucible. Dismissed with nothing but your resolve grows. Economically, Birmingham's brass industry drives global trade, its goods adorning homes worldwide while you struggle to afford shoes. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the foundry's dangers. Socially, the strike strengthens worker bonds. You carve a small mark into a crucible, a quiet defiance against its heat. Reformers, like Charles Dickens, moved by child laborers' plights, will soon amplify your struggle, spotlighting the foundry's toll, reflecting on this era. Your story reveals the cost of industrialization's reliance on tiny hands. Birmingham's foundries built wealth on children's labor, but your protest helped secure reforms. The Factory Acts, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern child labor laws, ensuring time for school and play. The foundries, now gone or repurposed, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though defeated, sowed seeds of change, echoed in today's protections. As you carry another crucible, the heat searing, you wonder, what small acts of courage might your brother carry forward, and how will they shape a world where children are free to be children? Story 11, Women's Work, the Unseen Hands of the Mills. Imagine yourself in Oldham, Lancashire, in the 1860s, a cotton spinning town where the Industrial Revolution's mills dominate the skyline. You're a 25-year-old woman, a spinner in a steam-powered mill, one of countless women whose labor fuels Britain's textile empire. You rise at 4:30 a.m. in a cramped tenement, sharing a damp room with your widowed mother and two younger siblings. Breakfast is a thin porridge, eaten quickly before the mill's bell summons you to a 12-hour shift. Your wages, about 9 shillings a week, are less than a man's for the same work, yet they're vital to keep your family from starvation. The air outside is thick with coal smoke, a grim prelude to the mill's lint-filled haze. The mill is a roaring labyrinth of spinning. Mules, their clatter, drowning out all else. You operate a mule, guiding cotton into thread, your hands deft but calloused from years of work. The air, heavy with cotton dust, sparks a cough that's become your constant companion. The Factory Act of 1864 limits women's shifts to 10 hours, but loopholes and overtime keep you working longer. Under the overseer's watchful eye, he fines you for pausing or talking, while the mill owner, a distant figure, profits from your toil. Accidents are common. A woman's hair was caught in a mule last week, her scalp torn, dismissed with no aid. Your work demands relentless focus, the mule's spinning bobbins, a blur of danger. You've learned tricks from older women. Tie your hair tightly, keep your apron short to avoid snags. Women dominate the spinning rooms, their lower wages preferred by owners. Yet you're treated as inferior, barred from skilled roles like mule maintenance. Your mother, a former weaver, now takes in laundry, her hands raw from lye, while your siblings, too young for the mill, scavenge coal scraps to heat your tenement socially. Your life is bound to Oldham's working-class community. Neighbors, mostly mill women, share your struggles, trading food scraps or mending tips over weak tea. Sundays at the Methodist chapel offer solace, though work often steals this day. You hear whispers of women's labor groups, inspired by Chartist ideals, but the combination acts make organizing risky. Economically, your labor powers Oldham's mills, their cotton thread clothing global markets, from America to India. Yet, you see no wealth living in the shadow of owners' grand homes. As you thread a mule, you overhear talk of a wage gap, men earning more for less work. A spinner named Mary plans a women's meeting to demand equal pay and shorter hours. A bold move that could spark change. The idea stirs hope, but fear of dismissal looms, threatening your family's survival. You wonder, can you join this fight for fairness, or will defying the mill cost you everything? You're back in the Oldham mill, the year still in the 1860s, the spinning mule's relentless hum filling the lint-choked air. At 25, your cough deepens, a mark of the cotton dust settling in your lungs, and your hands ache from threading bobbins. The wage gap stings your 9 shillings a week, compared to a man's 15 for similar work, barely keeps your family fed. Your mother's laundry work adds a few pennies, but your siblings, 10 and 12, may soon join the mill, their childhoods sacrificed to poverty. The overseer, a stern man, docks your pay for a moment's rest, while the mill owner, profiting from global cotton demand, ignores the women's plight. The Factory Act's limits are undermined by forced overtime, tying you to the mules. Life outside the mill is a struggle in Oldham's slums. Your tenement, a damp, soot-stained room, houses for its single fire, barely warming the space. Meals are sparse bread or watery stew, rarely meat stretched thin for growing children. The community of mill women sustains you. Neighbors share a kettle or swap stories of rural lives lost to enclosures. Sundays at the chapel are rare, stolen by extra shifts, but when you attend, hymns clash with your anger at unequal pay. Your siblings' charity school lessons are sporadic, their reading limited to a worn Bible you use to teach them. Socially, the mill defines your world. You've bonded with Mary, who shares tricks to speed up spinning and avoid fines. Talk of the wage gap grows heated. Last month, a woman collapsed from exhaustion, dismissed with nothing. Mary's women's labor group gains traction, demanding equal pay and shorter hours, inspired by reformers like Francis Powercobb. The combination axe makes such plans perilous. But the 1860 Manchester women's protests, though crushed, fuel hope. You recall their arrests, a warning of the risks you face economically. Your labor drives Oldham's mills, their thread weaving the fabric of empires, while you struggle to mend your siblings' rags. The steam-powered mules boost output, but the profits enrich owners, not you. Accidents haunt the mill. Your friend's finger was crushed by a bobbin, sent home with a shilling. You tie your hair tighter, a small defiance against the mules' dangers. Your mother's cough mirrors yours, a grim reminder of the mill's toll. During a brief break, eating cold porridge beside your mule, you hear Mary planning the women's meeting. She speaks of refusing overtime if demands for equal pay aren't met, a risky move that could spark a strike. The idea ignites hope, but fear grips you. Losing your job could mean starvation. As you thread another bobbin, the mules hum, drowning. Your thoughts, you ponder. Could joining this fight win fairness for women? Or will it plunge your family deeper into poverty? You stand in the Oldham mill, the year nearing 1869. Your cough, now a constant rasp, as you work among the spinning mules. Mary's women's labor group has grown into a bold plan, a strike to demand equal pay and shorter hours for women spinners. At 25, driven by the wage gap and the memory of the woman who collapsed, you join the protest, heart pounding as the factory bell rings and the mules fall silent. Outside, you and dozens of women, joined by a few male spinners, form a picket line, chanting for fairness and rest. For a moment, you envision a mill where women earn as much as men, where your siblings might know a better life. The strike collapses within days. The mill owner, backed by Oldham's magistrates, hires strikebreakers, desperate women from nearby slums, and calls in constables. Mary is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts, and you return to work, wages unchanged, under harsher oversight. Another accidental woman's hand, mangled by a mule, reminds you of the mill's dangers. Yet, the strike's failure fuels reform. By 1874, stronger factory acts will limit women's hours, and women's unions will grow, inspired by your stand, paving the way for fairer pay. Life grinds on. Your cough signals a shortened life, and your mother's health falters from laundry work. Your tenement remains a cold, damp prison, but the community endures. Neighbors share broth or mend clothes together, and you teach your siblings to write, hoping they'll escape the mill. Sundays at the chapel, when possible, bring hymns, but union pamphlets offer more hope, whispering of women's rights. The mill's dangers persist. Your sister's apron caught in a mule, narrowly escaping injury, but your resolve grows economically. Oldham's mills power Britain's cotton trade, their thread clothing empires, while you struggle to afford a winter shawl. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the mill's dangers. Socially, the strike strengthens bonds among women workers. You carve a small mark into your mule's frame, a quiet defiance against its demands. Reformers, like Elizabeth Gaskell, moved by women's struggles, will soon amplify your plight, spotlighting the wage gap, reflecting on this era. Your story reveals the unseen labor of women in industrialization's heart. Oldham's mills built wealth on women's underpaid work, but your protest helped secure reforms. The factory acts and growing women's unions, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern gender equity in work. The mills, now gone or repurposed, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though defeated, sowed seeds of change, echoed in today's labor laws. As you thread another bobbin, the mules hum unrelenting. You wonder, what small acts of courage might your siblings carry forward? And how will they shape a world where women's work is valued? Story 12, The Strikebreakers, Betrayal in the Ranks. Picture yourself in Blackburn, Lancashire, in the 1870s. A cotton-weaving town where the Industrial Revolution's mills loom large, their chimneys blackening the sky. You're a 30-year-old weaver, one of thousands toiling in steam-powered mills to feed Britain's textile empire. You wake at 5 a.m. in a cramped, soot-stained tenement, sharing 2 rooms with your wife and 4 children. Breakfast is a hasty slice of bread and weak tea, barely enough for the 12-hour shift ahead. Your wages, about 12 shillings a week, are stretched thin for rent and food, leaving no buffer against illness or unemployment. The mill's bell, a relentless call, drives your day. The mill is a deafening maze of power looms, their clatter shaking the floor as you weave cotton into cloth. The air, thick with lint, irritates your lungs, sparking a cough shared by many. The Factory Act of 1867 limits shifts to 10 hours, but loopholes and cleaning shifts extend your workday. Overseers, wielding fines, push you to maintain pace, while the mill owner, a wealthy figure, profits from global cotton demand. Accidents are frequent. A boy's hand was crushed by a loom last week, sent home with a shilling. You've learned to keep your apron short and move quickly, guided by older weavers' tips. Your work is grueling, the looms demanding constant attention. Women and children, paid less, work alongside you, their presence fueling tensions as owners cut wages to stay competitive. The threat of strikebreakers, workers willing to cross picket lines, looms large, especially after recent wage cuts. Your family depends on your pay, and the workhouse, where families are split apart, is a constant fear. Socially, your life centers on Blackburn's working-class community. Neighbors, mostly mill workers, share your struggles, trading scraps of food or tales of rural life over tea. Sundays at the Baptist chapel offer solace, though extra shifts often steal this day. You hear whispers of trade unions, inspired by Chartist ideals, but the combination acts make organizing risky economically. Your labor powers Blackburn's mills, their cloth clothing markets from America to India. Yet you see no wealth living in the shadow of owners' grand homes. As you adjust a loom, you overhear talk of a wage cut down to 10 shillings, sparking anger among workers. A weaver named John plans a strike to demand restored pay and shorter hours, but rumors of strikebreakers, often desperate newcomers, threaten the effort. The idea of a strike stirs hope, but the risk of betrayal by fellow workers chills you. Joining could secure better wages, but if strikebreakers prevail, you could lose everything. You wonder, can you trust your coworkers to hold the line? Or will betrayal fracture the fight? You're back in the Blackburn mill, the year still in the 1870s. The loom's relentless clatter filling the lint-choked air. At 30, your cough worsens, a mark of the cotton dust settling in your lungs, and your hands are raw from weaving. The wage cut has hit, dropping your pay to 10 shillings a week, forcing your wife to take in sewing for pennies. Your children, too young for the mill, scavenge coal scraps, their faces gaunt from hunger. The overseer, a sharp-tongued man, fines you for a thread break, while the mill owner, profiting from global textile markets, ignores your plight. The factory acts. Limits are eroded by forced overtime, tying you to the looms. Life outside is a struggle in Blackburn's slums. Your tenement, a damp hovel, leaks in the rain, its 2 rooms barely warmed by a meager fire. Meals are thin potatoes or bread with dripping stretched to feed 6. The community of mill workers sustains you. Neighbors lend a kettle or share. Stories of lost farms. Sundays at the chapel are rare, stolen by extra shifts. But when you attend, hymns clash with your anger at the wage cut. Your children's charity school lessons are sporadic, their reading limited to a tattered Bible you use to teach them socially. The mill defines your world. You've bonded with John, who shares tricks to speed up looms and avoid fines. Talk of the wage cut fuels rage. Last month, a weaver collapsed from exhaustion, dismissed with nothing. John's strike plan gains traction, demanding restored wages and a 10-hour day. The combination acts make organizing perilous. But the 1871 Trade Union Act offers slight protection, inspiring hope. You recall the 1878 Blackburn strike, crushed by strikebreakers' newcomers, desperate for work, who broke the picket line. Their betrayal looms as John warns of similar risks now. Economically, your labor drives Blackburn's mills, their cloth-weaving empires, while you struggle to mend your children's rags. The steam-powered looms boost output, but profits enrich owners, not you. Accidents haunt the mill. Your friend's arm was caught in a loom, sent home with a pittance. You tie a cloth tighter around your face, but the lint seeps through. Your wife's cough mirrors yours, a grim reminder of the mill's toll. During a brief break, eating cold porridge beside your loom, you hear John rallying workers for the strike. He speaks of halting looms if demands aren't met, but whispers of strikebreakers, poor migrants lured by owners spread fear. The idea of striking ignites hope, but the risk of betrayal grips you. Losing your job could mean the workhouse. As you adjust another loom, its hum drowning your thoughts, you ponder, can you trust your fellow workers to stand united, or will strikebreakers shatter your fight? You stand in the Blackburn Mill, the year nearing 1875. Your cough now a deep rasp as you weave among the roaring looms. John's strike plan to restore wages and secure a 10-hour day has ignited action. At 30, driven by the wage cut and the memory of the weaver who collapsed, you join the strike, heart pounding as the factory bell rings and the looms fall silent. Outside, you and dozens of workers, men and women, form a picket line, chanting for fair pay and shorter hours. For a moment, you envision a life where your children eat more than scraps. Free from the workhouse's shadow, the strike crumbles. Within days, the mill owner, backed by Blackburn's magistrates, hires strikebreakers, desperate migrants from nearby towns who cross the picket line for meager pay. Constables disperse the crowd, and John is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts. You return to work, wages still 10 shillings, under harsher oversight. Another accident, a child's hand mangled by a loom underscores the mill's dangers. Yet, the strike's failure fuels reform. By 1878, stronger factory acts will enforce shorter hours, and the 1871 Trade Union Act will bolster unions. A legacy of your stand against strikebreakers. Life grinds on. Your cough signals a shortened life, and your wife's health falters from sewing late into the night. Your tenement remains a cold, damp prison, but the community endures. Neighbors share broth or mend clothes together, and you teach your children to write, hoping they'll escape the mill. Sundays at the chapel, when possible, bring hymns, but union pamphlets offer more hope, whispering of workers' rights. The mill's dangers persist, your brother's sleeve caught in a loom, narrowly escaping injury, but your resolve grows economically. Blackburn's mills power Britain's cotton trade, their cloth clothing empires, while you struggle to afford a winter coat. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the mill's dangers. Socially, the strike strengthens bonds among workers. Despite the sting of betrayal by strikebreakers, you carve a small mark into your looms. Frame a quiet defiance against its demands. Reformers, like Charles Dickens, moved by workers' struggles, will soon amplify your plight, spotlighting the mill's toll. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the cost of division among workers. Blackburn's mills built wealth on your labor, but strikebreakers' betrayal delayed change. Yet, your protest helped secure reforms. The factory acts and growing unions, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern labor protections. The mills, now gone or repurposed, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though betrayed, sowed seeds of unity, echoed in today's labor laws. As you weave another yard of cloth, the looms hum, unrelenting. You wonder, what acts of solidarity might your children carry forward, and how will they shape a world where workers stand as one? Story 13, The Tenement Trap. Living in industrial squalor. Imagine yourself in Manchester, England, in the 1870s, a city pulsing with Industrial revolutions, cotton mills, their smokestacks choking the air with soot. You're a 28-year-old mill worker, operating spinning mules to support your partner and 3 children. You wake at 4:30 a.m. in a crumbling tenement in Ancoats, a slum where your family shares a single damp room with peeling walls and a leaking roof. Breakfast is a scrap of bread and watery tea, barely enough for the 12-hour shift ahead. Your wages, about 11 shillings a week, cover rent and meager food, leaving nothing for repairs or medicine. The workhouse, where families are torn apart, looms as a constant threat. The tenement is a trap of squalor. The air reeks of mildew and coal smoke, seeping through cracked windows. A shared privy, overflowing and foul, serves dozens of families. Breeding disease, your youngest child fell ill with fever last month, and medicine was beyond your means. The mill, a roaring fortress of steam-powered mules, is no better. Its lint-filled air worsening your cough. The Factory Act of 1867 limits shifts to 10 hours. But overtime stretches your day, enforced by overseers who fine you for pausing. Accidents. Our common co-worker's hand was crushed by a mule, dismissed with no aid. Your work requires relentless focus, guiding cotton into thread while dodging the mule's gears. You've learned to tie your hair back and roll up your sleeves, tricks from older workers, but exhaustion invites errors. The mill's dangers and the tenement's decay weigh heavily. Your partner, a seamstress, works late by candlelight, her eyes failing. Socially, your life is bound to Ancoats' working-class community. Neighbors, mostly mill workers, share your struggles, trading scraps of coal or stories of rural lives lost to enclosures. Sundays at the Methodist chapel offer solace, though. Work often steals this day. Whispers of sanitary reformers, like Edwin Chadwick, promise cleaner housing, but change feels distant economically. Your labor fuels Manchester's cotton empire, its thread clothing global markets from India to America. Yet, you see no wealth, trapped in a tenement, while mill owners live in grand villas. As you thread a mule, you hear of a new rent hike, despite the tenement's decay. A neighbor, Ellen, plans a tenants' meeting to demand repairs and fair rent, a bold move that risks eviction. The idea stirs hope, but fear grips you. Losing your home could mean the workhouse. You wonder, can you join this fight for a livable home, or will defying the landlord deepen your family's misery? You're back in the Manchester mill, the year still in the 1870s. The spinning mules roar, filling the lint-choked air as you thread cotton with weary hands. At 28, your cough deepens, a sign of the dust's toll and your wages. Now 10 shillings, after a cut, barely cover the tenement's rising rent. Your partner's seamstress work adds a few pennies, but your children, aged 6 to 11, scavenge coal to help their health fading in the slum's filth. The overseer, a harsh man, fines you for a thread break, while the mill owner, profiting from global cotton demand, ignores your plight. The Factory Act's limits are undermined by forced overtime, chaining you to the mill. Life in the tenement is a daily battle. The single room, damp and soot-stained, reeks of rot, its ceiling dripping during rain. A shared privy, festering with waste, spreads sickness's neighbor's child died of cholera last week. Meals are sparse potatoes or bread with drippings, thin for 5. The community of mill workers sustains you. Neighbors share a candle or tales of cleaner villages. Sundays at the chapel are rare, stolen by extra shifts. But when you attend, hymns clash with your anger at the tenement's decay. Your children's charity school lessons are spotty, their reading limited to a tattered hymn book you use to teach them. Socially, Ancoats binds you to others. You've bonded with Ellen, who shares tips to avoid mule accidents. Talk of the rent hike fuels rage. The landlord, a distant figure, ignores leaking roofs and broken stairs. Elon's tenants meeting gains support, demanding repairs and rent caps. Inspired by sanitary reformers like Octavia Hill, the combination acts make organizing risky. But the 1875 Artisans' Dwellings Act hints at housing reform, giving hope. You recall the 1872 Manchester rent strikes, crushed by evictions, a warning of the risks ahead. Economically, your labor powers Manchester's mills, their thread-weaving empires, while you struggle to afford a blanket. The mill's output grows, but profits enrich owners, not you. The tenement's filth worsens, your youngest's fever lingers. Untreatable, with no money for a doctor, you tie a cloth tighter around your face in the mill, but the lint seeps through. Your partner's cough echoes yours, a grim reminder of the slum's toll. During a brief break, eating cold porridge beside your mule, you hear Ellen rallying tenants for the meeting. She speaks of refusing rent until repairs are made, a bold move that could spark a protest. The idea ignites hope, but fear grips you. Eviction could mean the workhouse. As you thread another mule, its gears grinding, you ponder, could joining this fight win a decent home, or will it trap your family deeper in squalor? You stand in the Manchester mill, the year nearing 1876. Your cough a constant rasp as you work among the spinning mules. Ellen's tenants' meeting has grown into a daring plan, a rent strike to demand repairs and fair rents for Ancoats tenements. At 28, driven by your children's fevers and the crumbling walls of your home, you join the protest, heart pounding as you withhold rent, joining neighbors in a stand outside the landlord's office. For a moment, you envision a tenement with sound roofs and clean water, where your family can live without fear of disease or the workhouse. The rent strike collapses within days. The landlord, backed by Manchester's magistrates, threatens eviction and sends bailiffs to intimidate tenants. Ellen is arrested, charged with disturbing the peace, and you resume paying rent, the tenement still decaying. Another child in your building falls ill from the previous filth, a stark reminder of the slum's dangers. Yet, the strike's failure fuels reform. By 1879, the Artisans' Dwellings Act will enable slum clearances and sanitary campaigns. Will push for better housing, a legacy of your stand. Life grinds on. Your cough signals a shortened life, and your partner's health falters from sewing in dim light. Your tenement remains a damp, filthy trap, but the community endures. Neighbors share soup or mend clothes together, and you teach your children to write, hoping they'll escape Ancoats. Sundays at the chapel, when possible, bring hymns, but sanitary reform pamphlets offer more hope, whispering of cleaner cities. The mill's dangers persist. Your friend's hand was caught in a mule, dismissed with nothing, but your resolve grows. Economically, Manchester's mills drive Britain's cotton trade, their thread clothing empires, while you struggle to afford soap. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the mill and tenement. Socially, the strike strengthens bonds among neighbors. You carve a small mark into your tenement's wall, a quiet defiance against its decay. Reformers, like Charles Dickens, moved by slum dwellers' plights, will soon amplify your struggle, spotlighting the tenement's squalor. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the cost of industrialization's neglected slums. Manchester's mills built wealth on workers' misery, but your protest helped spark housing reforms. The Artisans' Dwellings Act and sanitary campaigns, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern housing standards. The tenements, now cleared or rebuilt, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though defeated, sowed seeds of change, echoed in today's safer homes. As you thread another mule, the tenement's damp walls awaiting you, you wonder, what acts of courage might your children carry forward, and how will they shape a world free from squalor? Story 14: The Coal Dust Curse. Miners' lives underground. Yourself in Wigan, Lancashire, in the 1870s, a coal mining town where the Industrial Revolution's hunger for fuel scars the earth and its people. You're a 33-year-old collier. You wake at 4 a.m. in a cramped tenement, sharing a soot-stained room with your wife and 5 children. Breakfast is a crust of bread and weak tea, barely enough for the grueling shift ahead. Your wages, about 15 shillings a week, are eroded by fines and rent, leaving little for food or medicine. The mine's whistle, a grim summons, rules your life. The pit is a dark, suffocating maze, its tunnels lit by flickering lamps. You hack at the coal face with a pick, coal dust coating your lungs and skin, sparking a cough that worsens, yearly known as miner's lung. The Mines Act of 1872 mandates safety measures, but enforcement is weak, and pit owners prioritize output over lives. Roof collapses and gas explosions are constant threats. A mate lost his leg in a cave-in last month, sent home with nothing. The overman, a harsh supervisor, pushes you to work faster, docking pay for pauses, while the mine owner, a distant figure, profits from your toil. Your work is backbreaking, crawling through low tunnels to reach the coalface, your body aching from hours bent double. You've learned to listen for creaking timbers, a trick from older miners, but danger is ever present. Boys as young as 12 work as trappers, opening ventilation doors, their small frames at risk in the dark. Socially, your life revolves around Wigan's mining community. Neighbors, mostly colliers, share your fears, trading scraps of food or tales of rural lives before the pits. Sundays at the primitive Methodist chapel offer solace, though shifts often steal this day. Whispers of miners' unions, inspired by Chartist ideals, circulate. But the combination acts make organizing risky. Economically, your labor fuels Britain's industrial might, powering steam engines from Manchester to London. Yet, you see no wealth, living in the shadow of owners' grand homes. As you swing your pick, you hear of a new wage cut, despite rising coal demand. A miner named Thomas plans a union meeting to demand fair pay and safer conditions. A bold move that risks dismissal. The idea stirs hope, but fear of blacklisting, Looms losing your job, could mean starvation. You wonder, can you join this fight to escape the coal dust's curse? Or will defying the pit owners deepen your family's hardship? You're back in the Wigan pit, the year still in the 1870s. The coal faces darkness, swallowing the light of your lamp as you hew coal, dust choking your lungs. At 33, your miner's lung deepens, each breath a struggle, and your wages, now 13 shillings after a cut, barely cover the tenement's rent. Your wife takes in washing, her hands raw, while your eldest son, 13, works as a trapper, his cough echoing yours. The overman finds you for a moment's rest, while the mine owner, profiting from coal's global demand, ignores the pit's dangers. The Mines Act's safety rules are flouted, leaving you vulnerable to collapses and gas. Life in the tenement is grim. The single room, damp and soot-blackened, reeks of coal dust, its walls crumbling. Meals are sparse bread or thin broths stretched to feed 7. The mining community sustains you. Neighbors share a candle or stories of lost fields. Sundays at the chapel are rare, stolen by extra shifts. But when you attend, hymns clash with your anger at the wage cut. Your son's charity school lessons are sporadic, his reading limited to a worn Bible you use to teach him. Socially, the pit binds you to others. You've bonded with Thomas. Talk of the wage cut fuels rage. Last month, a gas explosion killed 2 miners, their families left destitute. Thomas's union meeting gains support, demanding fair pay and safety reforms. Inspired by the 1871 Trade Union Act, the Combination Acts still threaten, and you recall the 1874 Wigan strike, crushed by blacklisting. The mine's dangers persist. Your friend was burned by a gas leak, dismissed with nothing. You wear a damp cloth over your face, but the dust seeps through economically. Your labor powers Wigan's coal industry, fueling Britain's factories while you struggle to afford boots. The pit's output grows, but profits enrich owners, not you. Your son's cough worsens, a sign of the coal dust's curse. During a brief break, coughing in the tunnel's gloom, you hear Thomas rallying miners for the union meeting. He speaks of striking if demands aren't met, a risky move with owners quick to hire desperate replacements. The idea ignites hope, but fear grips you. Lose your job could mean the workhouse. As you swing your pick, the coal dust stinging your eyes, you ponder. Could joining this fight lift the curse of the pits, or will it plunge your family deeper into poverty? You stand in the Wigan pit, the year nearing 1877. Your cough a hacking rasp as you hew coal in the suffocating dark. Thomas's union meeting has sparked a bold plan, a strike to demand fair wages and safer conditions. At 33, driven by your son's cough and the memory of the miners killed by gas, you join the strike, heart pounding as the pit's whistle sounds and the coalface falls silent. Outside, you and dozens of miners, men and boys, form a picket line, chanting for pay, restoration, and safety reforms. For a moment, you envision a life where your children breathe easier, free from the coal dust's curse and the workhouse's threat. The strike collapses within days. The mine owner, backed by Wigan's magistrates, hires replacement workers. Desperate men from nearby Townsend calls in constables. Thomas is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts, and you return to work, wages still 13 shillings, under stricter oversight. Another accident, a roof collapse, traps a boy. Saved but injured underscores the pit's dangers. Yet, the strike's failure fuels reform. By 1880, stronger minds' acts will enforce safety and unions. Bolstered by the 1871 Trade Union Act, will grow a legacy of your stand. Life grinds on. Your cough signals a shortened life, and your wife's health falters from washing in cold water. Your tenement remains a damp, sooty prison, but the community endures. Neighbors share broth or mend clothes together, and you teach your son to write, hoping he'll escape the pits. Sundays at the chapel, when possible, bring hymns, but union pamphlets offer more hope, whispering of miners' rights. The pit's dangers persist. Your friend's arm was crushed by falling coal. Dismissed with nothing but your resolve, strengthens economically. Wigan's coal powers Britain's industries, fueling empires, while you struggle to afford a blanket. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the pit's perils. Socially, the strike forges tighter bonds among miners. You carve a small mark into your pick's handle, a quiet defiance against the coal dust's curse. Reformers, like Friedrich Engels, moved by miners' plights, will soon amplify your struggle, spotlighting the pit's toll. Reflecting on this era, your story reveals the cost of industrialization's reliance on coal. Wigan's pits built wealth on miners' broken bodies, but your protest helped secure reforms. The mine's axe and growing unions, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern safety standards. The pits, now closed, or museums, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though defeated, sowed seeds of change, echoed in today's protections. As you swing your pick, the coal dust choking, you wonder, what acts of courage might your son carry forward? And how will they shape a world free from the pit's curse? Story 15, The Machine's Grip. Automation's threat to workers step into Leeds, England, in the 1870s. A textile hub where the Industrial Revolution's steam-powered machines dominate the skyline. You're a 29-year-old weaver, operating power looms in a sprawling mill to support your widowed mother and to younger siblings. You wake at 4:45 a.m. in a damp tenement, sharing a single room that reeks of soot from nearby chimneys. Breakfast is a hurried crust of bread and weak tea, barely enough for the 12-hour shift ahead. Your wages, about 10 shillings a week, cover rent and sparse meals. But new automated looms threaten to cut jobs, pushing you closer to poverty's edge. The mill is a deafening fortress of clattering looms, their steam-driven belts shaking the floor. You weave wool into cloth, your hands scarred from years of work, while the air, thick with wool fibers, irritates your lungs, sparking a persistent cough. The Factory Act of 1867 limits shifts to 10 hours, but maintenance shifts extend your day, enforced by overseers who fine you for slowing. The mill owner, profiting from Leeds' textile boom, invests in automated looms that promise faster output with fewer workers. Last week, a weaver was replaced by a machine, dismissed with no aid. Your work demands constant vigilance, threading looms while dodging belts that could maim. You've learned to oil gears quickly, a trick from older weavers. But the new machines require fewer hands, threatening your livelihood. Socially, your life centers on Leeds' working-class community. Neighbors, mostly mill workers, share your fears of automation, trading food scraps or stories of rural lives lost to enclosures. Sundays at the Congregational Chapel offer solace, though extra shifts often steal this day. Whispers of trade unions, inspired by the 1871 Trade Union Act, circulate, but the combination acts make organizing risky. Economically, your labor fuels Leeds' textile industry, clothing markets from Europe to America. Yet, you see no wealth living in the shadow of owners' grand villas. As you thread a loom, you hear of plans to install more automated machines, cutting wages and jobs. A weaver named Eliza organizes a meeting to demand job protections and fair pay, a bold move that risks dismissal. The idea stirs hope, but fear of unemployment looms if machines replace you. The workhouse awaits. You wonder, can you join this fight to resist the machine's grip? Or will defying the mill owners deepen your family's hardship? You're back in the Leeds mill, the year still in the 1870s. The power loom's relentless clatter, filling the air thick with wool dust. At 29, your cough worsens, a mark of the fibers clogging your lungs, and your wages, now 9 shillings after a cut, barely cover the tenement's rent. Your mother's sewing adds a few pennies, but your siblings, 14 and 16, face pressure to join the mill, where automated looms threaten their future. The overseer, a gruff man, finds you for a tangled thread, while the mill owner, reaping profits from global textile demand, pushes for more machines. The factory act's limits are undermined by forced overtime, chaining you to the looms. Life in the tenement is bleak. The single room, damp and soot-stained, leaks during rain, its meager fire failing to warm, for meals are thin petit, or bread with dripping stretched to feed all. The community of mill workers sustains you. Neighbors share a candle or tales of lost fields. Sundays at the chapel are rare, stolen by extra shifts. But when you attend, hymns clash with your anger. At job losses to machines, your siblings' charity school lessons are spotty. Their reading limited to a worn Bible you use to teach them. Socially, the mill defines your world. You've bonded with Eliza, who shares tricks to avoid loom jams. Talk of automation grows urgent. Last month, 2 weavers were replaced by a single machine, sent home with nothing. Eliza's meeting gains traction, demanding job protections and wage restoration, inspired by the 1871 Trade Union Act. The combination acts still loom, and you recall the 1873 Leeds strike, crushed by blacklisting. The mill's dangers persist. Your friend's hand was caught in a belt, dismissed with a shilling. You tie a cloth tighter around your face, but the wool dust seeps through. Economically, your labor powers Leeds' textile trade, weaving cloth for empires while you struggle to afford a blanket. The automated looms boost output, but profits enrich owners, not you. Your mother's eyesight fades from sewing, a sign of the tenement's toll. During a brief break, eating cold porridge beside your loom, you hear Eliza rallying workers for the meeting. She speaks of halting looms if demands aren't met, a risky move with owners ready to replace strikers with machines. The idea ignites hope, but fear grips you loose. Your job could mean the workhouse. As you thread another loom, its belts. Worry, you ponder. Could joining this fight halt the machine's grip, or will it trap your family deeper in poverty? You stand in the Leeds mill, the year nearing 1878. Your cough a constant wheeze as you weave among the clattering power looms. Eliza's meeting has sparked a bold plan, a strike to demand job protections and fair wages against the spread of automated looms. At 29, driven by the weavers, replaced by machines, and your family's hunger, you join the strike, heart pounding as the mill's whistle sounds and the looms fall silent. Outside, you and dozens of workers, men and women, form a picket line, chanting for work security and restored pay. For a moment, you envision a life where your siblings can work without machines stealing their future. Free from the workhouse's shadow. The strike collapses within days. The mill owner, backed by Leeds magistrates, hires desperate workers to run the new machines, and constables disperse the picket line. Eliza is arrested, charged with unlawful assembly under the Combination Acts, and you return to work. Wages still 9 shillings, under harsher oversight. Another accident: a weaver's arm, mangled by a bell-thunder, scores the mill's dangers. Yet, the strike's failure fuels reform. By 1880, stronger factory acts will regulate hours and unions, bolstered by the 1871 Trade Union Act, will push for job protections, a legacy of your stand against automation. Life grinds on. Your cough signals a shortened life, and your mother's health falters from sewing in dim light. Your tenement remains a damp, sooty prison, but the community endures. Neighbors share broth or mend clothes together, and you teach your siblings to write, hoping they'll escape the mill. Sundays at the chapel, when possible, bring hymns, but union pamphlets offer more hope, whispering of workers' rights. The mill's dangers: persister's sleeve caught in a loom, narrowly escaping injury, but your resolve grows economically. Leeds mills drive Britain's textile trade, clothing empires, while you struggle to afford shoes. The owner's wealth grows, but your wages stagnate, tying you to the mill's perils. Socially, the strike strengthens worker bonds. You carve a small mark into your loom's frame, a quiet defiance against the machine's grip. Reformers like William Morris, moved by workers' plights, will soon amplify your struggle, spotlighting automation's toll, reflecting on this era. Your story reveals the cost of industrialization's rush to automate. Leeds mills built wealth on workers' fears, but your protest helped secure reforms. The factory acts and growing unions, born of countless failed strikes, laid the foundation for modern job protections. The mills, now repurposed or gone, stand as monuments to your endurance. Your fight, though defeated, sowed seeds of change, echoed in today's labor laws. As you thread another loom, the machines hum unrelenting. You wonder, what acts of courage might your siblings carry forward? And how will they shape a world where workers prevail over machines?